uh, welcome you here today. My name is John Wagner. I'm one of the rural reps on the SAMA board, and I'd like to welcome you to our AGM today. Uh, First of all, on behalf of the staff, it's nice to see a good crowd out here, and we'd throughout the day we will be having coffee and tea, and it'll all be back there for you. Washrooms are over there, as I mentioned before, so help yourself to that. Another thing we'll be doing here is we should have, can't see the screen here, but we should have people coming on here virtually, so welcome to you also. I'll have you also turn off any cell phones or put them on vibrate or whatever, and that so that they're not interrupting the thing throughout the day. If you noticed in your packages, you'll have a thing that shows you the Slido app that's there. You can ask questions on that, and we'll get to those later in the question and answer sessions, okay? There's also question cards on your tables. You can fill them out. We'll pick those up, and we'll answer them. We'll probably get back to you after the meeting on those ones. Also, the reviews, the evaluations of the meeting will be done later. It's online. We did that last year, so we'll be bringing that out. If you look at your thing, you can see on the Slido there's an event, there's a password there. The password is events with an S 2024. So also, as we go through here, I'll go through the agenda with you right now to let you know what we're doing. We're going to start with the opening remarks. Is that up there? Is the agenda? You want to put it up? We'll do opening remarks with our chair, and Minister McMorris will be coming online here. He won't be with us today, and Mayor Charlie Clark also, and then our chair, Myron Knaffel. Myron will be doing an annual report from the Board of Directors. Some of our executive, Betty, Todd, Sean, and Matthew, will be doing reports to you, and then we'll have a coffee break. Come back with a session on the 2025 preliminary values package. I think that is Chandra and Sheldon doing that. And then we'll come back with Life of an Appraiser after lunch. The lunch will be here. It'll be served right here. And Kirsten will be doing that for us. We'll go into the assessment jurisdictions, Prince Albert, Regina, Saskatoon. That's Vanessa, Kalinda, Kevin, and Julianne. And then the 2025 preliminary values, Andrew will be doing that. And then we call it a question and answer session for Board of Directors. We used to call it a bear pit, but nobody liked that. Then after that's 20 resolutions. Currently, we have no resolutions. If you have an emergent resolution, you have till noon to bring it to any of the Board of Directors from SAMA or some of our executive here. So, and then we'll review it and do that. So, and that after that, we look at our adjournment. So, right now, I'm going to introduce you to our Board of Directors. Myron Knaffel, if you just stand when I say your name or wave so they know who you are. Myron Knaffel was appointed as SAMA's board chair in January 2017, and he served prior to that. He served as a board member since June of 2008. Myron and his wife Lori live in Watson. Myron's a businessman in Watson, owning a construction company, the Esso Service Station, and TC Enterprises. Myron is also involved in the community as mayor and numerous other positions. Myron and Lori like to spend the winters in Mesa, where he's also involved in working on older military airplanes. Jim Angus. Jim and his wife Brenda live in Harris. Jim has worked many years as an administrator for the RM of Harris. He has served on the RMAA and has also been on the SARM Board of Directors. After retiring, Jim has focused more on his business, Angus Auto Appraisals, doing appraisals on collector cars and memorabilia. He's a very active Mustang, Ford, and memorabilia collector, and it's worth stopping at Harris to view his impressive collection. Audrey Tremblay. Audrey and her husband Mel live in a beautiful lakefront home at Main Prize, a resort community near Weyburn. Audrey has a history with rural and urban municipalities as an administrator. She, like Jim, has been involved with the RMAA and also SARM Board of Director. Audrey is still working with local RMs and is very involved in the local school board. She's a very busy lady. Audrey and Mel have had some trying years medically, however, seem to make the best of it. And Mel and Audrey are an amazing couple and fun to be around. Dawn Looning, Dawn's not here today. Dawn and her husband David live in Moose Jaw. Dawn's a financial advisor and operates a successful business, Desjardins Financial Security Investments. Dawn is a member of the Moose Jaw City Council and also a SUMA board member. Apart from her civic duties in business, Dawn's an avid traveler and a huge baseball fan. Randy Golden and her late husband Rex live in Yorkton. Randy is very active in the city, not only as a city councilor, but also volunteering and serving on many community organizations. Randy was elected as the president of SUMA, resulting in a very busy schedule. She's constantly on the go, and in her free time, Randy enjoys traveling, especially when there's grandchildren involved. Rod Quinton. Rod and his wife Tamara live at Blackstrap Lake. Rod was born and raised in the Webb Gull Lake area and is currently a counselor for the RM of Dundurn. Rod has an extensive background in municipal administration and also school board administration. Rod and Tamara's combined family consists of 7 children and 7 grandchildren, and they're actively involved in their families' lives. In his spare time, Rod is also the chairman of the Municipal Employees Pension Plan that a lot of you belong to. Myself, I'm John Wagner. My wife Rhonda and I live on the north slope of the Cypress Hills, halfway between East End and Maple Creek. We farm and ranch in the Skull Creek area. I've been the reeve of the RM of Piapot for a long time. I've also been involved in SAMA for a long time. We enjoy where we live, but we do spend some time in the mountains at Moy Lake in BC and the surrounding mountains. At this time, I'd like to introduce Minister McMorris on here live. I can't see this. He is? Okay. I would like to introduce the Honorable Don McMorris, the Minister of Government Relations and Minister responsible for First Nations, Métis, and Northern Affairs. Don McMorris was raised in the southern Saskatchewan Indian Head Milestone constituency and maintains a strong connection to the community and people of that area. Throughout the years, Don has always focused on serving people of our province. For many years with the Saskatchewan Safety Council, he was elected to the legislature as the MLA for Indian Head Milestone in 1999. He's most recently re-elected in the 2020 provincial election. Don has served Saskatchewan in various roles in government over the years, and on November 9th, 2020, Premier Scott Moe appointed Don as the Minister of Government Relations, Minister responsible for First Nations, Métis, and Northern Affairs, and Minister responsible for the Provincial Capital Commission. So, Minister McMorris, welcome.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much for that introduction. And it's a pleasure to join you virtually from Treaty 4 territory as you gather in person on Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. It is really a pleasure to join even virtually. And I guess if there is one positive thing that came of COVID, it allows us to do this maybe a little more readily than we had before, even though I've done this so many times, and it's that 5 minutes before you get set up, is it actually going to work? It becomes very, very stressful. But I'm here, and hopefully you can hear, and I don't know whether you really want to see me, but you can hear me. You know, I really wanted to be there in person, but unfortunately we're in session and cabinet is on Wednesdays, and I just really felt that I needed to be here. I only have a number of cabinet meetings left, as I am not seeking re-election, which also is kind of bittersweet because this would be the last opportunity that I have to talk to the SAMA board and at the annual general meeting, which you are conducting right now. So it is a little bittersweet, but I certainly have enjoyed my time and have learned a lot, so much from your board of directors as well as you know, your executive and management team. I know they've been into my office different times when I've had issues with you know, constituents or businesses or RMs that are questioning some of the evaluations, and it was great. You know, I've been in the province all my life. I've paid taxes all my life, but until you are put in a role as, for example, government relations, and get a deeper dive into how the whole system works and the complexity of the system and how important assessment is and evaluations are, I don't know if you really completely understand. The other reason I would have loved to have been there is, number one, last opportunity and to thank you in person. But number two, we were able to make a bit of an adjustment finally in the SAMA budget by increasing it by $900,000. So usually politicians like to be there in person when you're going to make an announcement like that. But it brings the funding up to $12.2 million. I want to thank SAMA and its board for being patient. It had been frozen the funding had been frozen for a number of years. But thank you for being patient. I wanted to tell you that you have huge support within our government. Our government is very thankful for what you do, and we should be. We rely very heavily on property tax, as do municipalities across this province. We rely heavily on the EPT, of course, the education property tax portion, and having a strong assessment base is so very, very important. If that was untrusted, and I know there are people that will question their evaluations at time and their assessments at times, but by and far we get few complaints compared to the amount of properties and assessments that are done in the province. I think it's a very, and that's credit to the Saskatchewan Assessment Management Agency for I guess, you know, for instilling confidence, I think, first of all, in government, because I believe that you do have the full confidence of government, as well as then the people across the province, because, you know, our whole property value and our whole property tax fairness is based on assessment. And I don't have to tell you that, you all know that. It's always interesting, the assessment piece, though. If people are looking to sell, they want their assessment high. But if they're looking at their property taxes, they want it fair or low. And that's just kind of the reality that we live in. But it's a big year for SAMA moving forward. I know 24 will be a big year as SAMA prepares for the 2025 evaluation year. And I'm sure it will be very busy focusing on the future. So with that, I again want to thank SAMA for what they've done over the last number of years, over setting a goal of 100,000 property reviews, and have been able to meet that since 2018. And I hope that continues on into the future. It does, again, set a great base for the province when it relies so heavily on property tax and the fairness of assessment across the province. So with that, I will turn it back to you, John. And again, thank you for your service and the whole board for the great work that SAMA has conducted over the last number of years and will into the future. Thanks you again for having me, and sorry I could not be there in person.
Thank you, Minister McMorris. We certainly do appreciate you. I know our board and the executive, you have an open door policy. We've never been told we had a meeting in 2016. Don't worry about it. So it's unlike our federal government. But anyhow, had to get that in there. So thank you again, Minister McMorris. We certainly appreciate it. Can we have a round of applause for the minister here for... Also, thank you for the 900,000. That's very much appreciated. Mayor Charlie Clark could not be here today. The entire city council's been involved in a budget discussion, and it's been going, literally everybody down there is gone, so we didn't have anybody. So he sends his regards to the meeting, but unfortunately could not be here today. The next thing on our agenda is our Board of Directors report from our chair, Myron Knaffel. Myron, if you'd like to come up here. Just to mention, if you're not aware of how our chair works here, Myron's just been appointed for another 3-year term, and it's a joint decision between SARM, SUMA, and Government Relations. The three of them decide who the chair is and appoint that person. So congratulations, Myron, on an upcoming another 3 years.
Thank you, John. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to SAMA's annual general meeting for 2024. Thank you all for joining us today, both of you here in the room and also those of you who have joined us online. Thank you to Minister Don McMorris for your opening remarks, and I also want to thank Minister McMorris for his continued support for SAMA and his help in getting SAMA's provincial funding back on track in the budget a couple of weeks ago. He's done a tremendous amount of work bringing this forward to the Finance Committee to get that funding in place, and we just want to acknowledge that, all the help that he's given us for that. And also the SUMA and SARM, this year they just did a tremendous amount of work, background work that supported our taking our notes forward to the government and saying how critical this funding has to move up compared to what it has been for the last few years, especially in these inflationary times. It's so important because we've got so many costs beyond our control that go up that that inflationary funding is critical. So it was great to see that happened, and thanks to SUMA, SARM, and the province and all their support over the last years. With these partners, funding partners, we've been able to do make a lot of changes at SAMA and move forward and setting us up for the years to come. I'd like to also thank the City of Saskatoon, even though they couldn't be here today because they were so busy at their meeting today. But thank you for hosting today's annual general meeting. Overall, things went very well at SAMA last year. However, being a year leading up to reval, it takes a good portion of our staff away from regular duties. That, along with working with some vacant staff positions, has caused us to slip a bit on some of our performance targets. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of last year's performance results, as the executive reports to follow will provide more information. However, I'd like to highlight a few items from our annual report from 2023. And get this thing to work. This first slide shows our total annual property reviews for the past 12 years. Now, this is a combination of re-inspections and maintenance. And as you can see, this year at 93,650, we're just slightly lower than last year and a little lower than our target of 110,000. But there, again, that relates back to all the work we're doing on reval. When you're taking about 20 or 25 people out of the normal cycle of doing re-inspections and that and put them into reval, it sort of slows us down. And that's not unusual. That does happen on years when we're busy with other things. But our target going forward is still going to be 110,000 properties a year, or over the 4-year cycle trying to hit the 440,000, which keeps us on that 12-year cycle that we want to be able to get around the province every 12 years. So we feel that we're on track with that, and we'll be carrying on with that target. This next slide shows the tax gains for the past 10 years. We arrive at that number using just an average mill rate across the province, and this tax, $182 million, that's basically the municipal and education tax to combined. And just keeping in mind that $182 million that we've reached now in 2023, that's ongoing. That reoccurs every year. So once that's brought into the picture, that's money coming into the coffers of the municipalities and the province every year. So it's extremely important. It also makes the whole system more equitable. Like if you haven't been out to a property for 35 years, and who knows what the value of that property is. Now that we go out and we re-inspect them and we look at them, that makes it fair, both for the person of that property plus everybody else, because we all know that if you're not paying the proper amount of tax, somebody else is paying your share. So it makes it more a fair system if we can get around at a more constant basis. On-time maintenance delivery. This is from the agreements that we make with the municipalities. We make agreements with them. We ask them when they want to get their maintenance delivered to them. and we set a date, and hopefully we can hit that target. And our target is to hit 85%. This year, we're a little lower than last year. Last year, we had an exceptionally good year. We had 98%, I think it is. And this year, we're down to 87. Again, somewhat to blame the coming up reval for that. But still, you know, in that target, and we try to, I believe it's, Todd would correct me on this, but I think it's like 95% within 3 weeks of that date, something like that. So we try to get that as close as we can. But, you know, always room for improvement. We're always looking for ways to improve that and try to hit that target or better every year. Total property appeals. Now, this is a big issue that we've been having in the last several years. And, you know, ever since the professional appellants have been coming into the province, it's been a bigger challenge for us. And you can see we've had a couple of reval years that were really high. In 2017, 7230, which was way out. At least the last reval, we were down to 3588, which was a big improvement. But we're always looking at ways to, you know, to make the product better and, you know, try to cover the corners so that we don't have appellants finding ways to come in. We've had some major court rulings over the past few years that have clarified some gray areas, which is a big help. You know, if you can get to the courts and get the courts to make some decisions that make it perfectly clear, you know, how things should be done, so that you don't have the appellants coming back with, you know, different ways of looking at it, or this way they have to follow the rules as we do too. You know, we're not always right either, but at least it clarifies how it should be done, and from there on we shouldn't have to pay big money to go to the courts again. Our legal costs have been coming down slowly over that time because of the lower appeals. You can see this past year only 825 appeals, which is excellent. Of course, next year in 2025 going to be a reval year. Of course, we expect that to go up somewhat, as it does with every year a reval year. But hopefully it's within reason and doesn't cost us a fortune. And the other thing that we're always looking at is what are we costing the taxpayers? What are we costing our clients for our operation here at SAMA? And this gives you a bit of a view of what the per property, if we take each property in the province and how much it costs. This year we're at $26.59. It does go up, as you can see, a little bit each year, and that is basically inflationary costs. You know, 75% of our budget is wages, so you know, a lot of times we don't have a lot of control over that inflationary cost. I am proud to say, though, that as a rule, we've been able to stay under the rate of inflation with our cost rises. So we look at that very closely, try to keep it in line. Every one of us sitting at the board of directors table have experience with councils. We all know what it's like when every year you get the bill from some other organization that says, hey, we want more money. And we don't like it either. So we know what you're up against as municipalities, and that it's not easy to come up with that extra money every year. So we try to keep that to a minimum. And if you compare us to other jurisdictions, our comparison, of course, this chart only comes, I think the latest information we had was about 2022. And at that year, we were at 2572. And if you look at the other jurisdictions across Canada, we still came in, I guess it was, the lowest. Some are very close to us, but we came in at the lowest for 2022 on per property cost. So we feel that we're getting a good bang for our buck here at SAMA, but it's something that we always have to be aware of, and we realize even with new input of money like we've got this year, we can't run out like drunken sailors and try to spend a bunch of money where we don't have to. So it's always on our mind. Workforce turnover. As I mentioned, you know, 75% of your budget is wages, and if that's the case, then it shows you how important our staff is to our organization. So staff retention is extremely important, and we try to keep our staff happy and satisfied. Now, along with employee surveys, one of the ways that we measure the staff satisfaction is by looking at our turnover rate. Here you can see in 2023, it's 8.6, which is a little lower than last year at 9.2% of turnover per person. due to some retirements and some changing in their careers, it's just inevitable that you do lose some good people sometimes. But we like to keep this as low as possible because we feel that it's a lot better to retain your staff than it is to try to go out and recruit new staff and train them from scratch. So we work hard at that, and we always watch these turnover numbers to make sure they're not getting too far out of line. And then when you compare that to other organizations across the country, some of these numbers are from a few years back, but in 2023, we're at 9.78 employees absent days per person. As you can see, a lot of organizations are quite a bit higher than that. We're down in that in the area where it's not a serious problem with us. So, and we do have very good staff that don't take any more days off than they absolutely have to. I think that was all the slides I had. Yeah. So now, as I mentioned, staff is very important, and I truly have to say, I truly believe that we have the best staff. With all the changes we've made over the past years, we've never heard them complain. They just dig in their heels and get the job done. I would like them to know that their efforts are very much appreciated by every one of us. Now, looking forward to 2024, first of all, we want to continue to get our legal costs under control and keep our appeals to the minimum. That's one of our big goals. And one of the ways that we keep these appeals, cost of appeals to a minimum, and the price these lawyers charge for some of this work is just, it's mind-boggling. But what we've done, we've brought a program in, our executives brought a program in that we basically question every dollar that goes out to these legal partners. And first of all, we get a quote from them before we start. And if they vary off that quote at all, we're asking, why is that? Why is this $100 more than you quoted? And we're checking it every time. And it's amazing how they get a little closer to their estimates when you're questioning them a little closer like that. And that's helped a lot. But another big thing that's really starting to pay off, and I think a year or two ago I was telling you, we spent about $750,000 on legal costs, and it's just not sustainable. But unfortunately, that's starting to, some of them, that investment in legal fees is starting to pay off because the courts have ruled on a lot of these issues now. We're starting to see them court rulings come in, a lot of them in our favor. But even if they're not in our favor, they're drawing the line of where this is going and how this can be argued and how it can't be argued. So they can't keep dragging the same stuff back in and taking us to court with it every year after year. So a lot of these decisions are really helping us, and we're starting to slowly see our costs going down, which is something we want to keep working on. And the better product we can provide, the less chance that the appellants can find a loophole to take us and take it up to the higher courts, which costs money. The second thing is keep looking at ways to do things more efficiently, especially in these inflationary times. We always have to be looking at ways, how are we going to do things? How can we save costs? One of the things we're always looking at doing is simplifying it. Try to simplify it. Not only can that save us a lot of time and money, but it makes it more understandable for our clients and for the ratepayers. So we're always looking at that. The other thing is new technology. We have to keep up with technology. It changes so rapidly every year. We just have to keep changing with the times. A good example is a GIS system, which is a graphic information system. And when you look at some of the things that system can do, it's going to save us hours and hours of work going forward. So you got to keep up with them things. It does cost some money, unfortunately, but it's part of our game that we have to be playing. The third thing is to try to put together a collective bargaining agreement that is fair to everyone. Our contract ran out with our employees on end of last year, end of 2023, I guess it is. So we're already into the time our new contract will be covering. So we want to come up with an agreement with our staff that everybody can agree on and is fair to everyone. Also, we want to continue to try to improve our services for our clients, and this is an ongoing challenge. It's always in the back of our mind. If we go ahead in this direction or this direction, is this going to help with the service that we give to our clients, and that's number one priority in our organization is always improving what we're doing for our clients. I'd like to take a minute to thank our advisory committees. These members, they help us so much with their input twice a year. We meet twice a year with this group, and they make sure that we're going in the right direction. We tell them what we're doing at SAMA, what we've done, what we're doing, and where we're going, and they give us their advice, what they think is a good idea, a bad idea. So their assistance is very much appreciated. Another group that is a great help to us is the city assessors from Saskatoon, Regina, Prince Albert, and Swift Current. We meet with them 6 to 8 times a year, and the information we get from this group is invaluable. We'll be hearing a brief report from each of these providers a little later in the meeting, and to let you know what's going on in their jurisdictions. We sometimes get a question asked of why are they presenting it on our agenda, and the reason is that we work very closely with these people, and you know, we in these meetings that we have, we're sharing information all the time, and out of that we save a tremendous amount of time and money just by sharing the information. You know, they say this is what's worked for us in their jurisdiction, and we look at it and say, hey, that's a good idea. You know, and sharing this information back and forth is very important. So to hear from them at our meeting on what they're doing in their jurisdictions is important to all of us in this room. That's why we have them at our meetings and just give us a brief outline of what's going on in their jurisdictions. So we certainly do appreciate their involvement in the SAMA and City Assessors Committee. In closing, I'd like to thank you again for attending today. And as we all know, in November now, there's a round of municipal elections coming up in the province again. To all of those that are letting your name stand, again, thank you very much for your service, and we're certainly looking forward to working with you in the future. And for those of you that have decided to hang it up, I can understand that. It's not an easy job. It can sometimes be very challenging to be on a city or a town council. But we want to thank you for your years of service to your community, and it has been a privilege to work with you over the years. So with that, I'd like to introduce our CEO, our Chief Executive Officer for SAMA, and that's Betty Rogers. Betty had a 15-year career with SAMA as a Managing Director of Human Resources and Administration Division. Betty was appointed to the position of Chief Executive Officer of SAMA in December of 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, Betty Rogers.
Thanks, Myron. Hello, everyone. Again, and to the folks who are watching virtually, it's great to see you here. And I just want to let you know that I'm going to try and follow the words of one of my professors in university: be brilliant, be brief, and be gone. So I'm going to try and do a very short presentation here today. Before I get started, though, I'd like to know how many folks, if you just want to show hands, and sorry, I won't be able to look at the virtual folks, but how many are administration or administrators in the audience here today? And how many would be elected officials then? Oh, we got a good mix. Okay, good. So I hope that each of you have opportunities to learn some things here. And please, this is your opportunity to ask some questions of our staff. We've got the technical experts here. We've got the governance experts here. We've got the quality assurance people here. So please ask your questions. And I know that yesterday, after the administrator training session, some people held behind and asked some questions. And so we're here to help you. So here's my brief agenda, a little bit about SAMA. Some of you may not be familiar with our background and how we became an agency, so I'm going to give a very brief overview, talk about governance and responsibilities, talk to you about our key perspectives. I'm fairly process-oriented as a CEO, and so When I came on board as CEO, I wanted to categorize the way we approach our business and the way we track our progress. And so the executive team have been really good at working with that structure, and it seems to be an easy way for us to track our successes and areas that we need to do some improvements in also. And talk a little bit about our partnerships as well with you folks. On the governance side of things, we were formed in 1987, so we have been around for quite some time, and prior to that, we were part of the government. I believe it was municipal affairs at the time. We're responsible for the assessment system as well as providing assessment valuation services, and so we have an oversight responsibility for quality assurance and governance activities as well as valuation services in the province. We're jointly funded by the province and municipalities, as Myron has already explained, and we very much appreciate the support that we get from the municipalities as well as the province. We have a 7-member board of directors, which were introduced to you here today already. The assessment governance of the property base right now stands at around $271 billion in Saskatchewan. We provide valuation services to 762 urban, northern, and rural municipalities. And the system produces around $2.3 billion in revenues for municipalities and education. And we're proud to be part of that system and to be able to support your local communities in the work that you do also. We have office locations throughout the province. We've got about 164 staff, permanent full-time staff, and we also bring on a number of temporary staff. So through the summer months, we bring on summer students when we can manage it through our budget. And we also have some temporary staff from time to time to help out in special areas. So we've got 7 regional offices as well as central office. And those folks live and work in the communities that they serve. So hopefully you're able to go in and visit or talk on the phone with some of the people, some of our assessment folks in your local municipality, because they're there to help, and they have got lots of expertise there to answer your questions. We've already gone through an introduction for the SAMA board, but I do want to mention that working with this board is a pleasure, honestly. We work really well as a team. They bring really good experience and ideas to us as management of the organization. And they hear us out when we have ideas or things that we are challenged with, and they really understand how assessment works in Saskatchewan. And I think that you should be very happy that those folks sit on our board. So thank you very much for the work that you do. The SAMA's executive team, you may have met many of these people. Some are actually here today, so and you will see some presentations from these folks as well. But we have a really interesting way of operating now, I think, at SAMA from the executive standpoint, in that because my background is HR and other areas, I really, really rely on the technical expertise of our executive team. And so we do a lot of collaboration, we do a lot of shared decision making, a lot of joint accountability, which is a good way to operate for us at SAMA. It's working really well, and we've got a lot of success in the ways that we're trying to improve things at SAMA, and we've got more to do for sure. There's always areas that we need to improve, but really a pleasure working with this executive team. We also have got others that are part of the team that don't necessarily have their pictures here, but folks like Peter Ryan, who's our communications coordinator, participates regularly with our executive team. We've got directors. Andrew Workman is here, he's doing a presentation. We've got director of HR who participates with us as an executive team when we meet as well. So we've got a lot of expertise at SAMA. Key results for 2023, I won't spend too much time talking about this, but I do want you to know that we had some good successes and we had some challenges last year also. One of the things that we were working on is quality as a cultural value. So just in terms of the perspectives, we've got 5 different perspectives. First one, strategic. Second, customer stakeholder. Third, financial. Fourth, business processes. And the fifth is people and learning. And they're in no particular order, of course. It's just the way we organize them. But on the strategic side of things, we're working to build more quality into our processes and into our technology. So you'll see things like My SAMA enhancements or things happening on SAMA View. The technology is very, very important to us, and Myron had mentioned the GIS. We do want to improve and increase some of our GIS capabilities because it helps you. It helps our assessors also. So quality as a cultural value is something we work hard at, and we're tracking to see how well we're improving on our quality processes. On the customer and stakeholder side of things, of course, already mentioned property inspection and review. That's a big thing for you folks. Maintenance, assessment maintenance is very important, and prep for the 2025 revaluation, which you'll hear more about today also. We track our progress on all those things. The financial side of things is always a concern for us. Honestly, our costs go up regularly, of course, like licensing costs of our CAMA system, our computer-assisted mass appraisal system, which is called Govern. The costs go up, our data and technology costs go up, our people costs go up as everyone is feeling the pinch on the increases to all costs. So we manage things very carefully, as Myron was talking about today. Very close watch on our expenditures and whatnot. We are very, very thankful to the province for the additional support this year, as Minister McMorris had mentioned. A number of years of freezes was getting pretty tight for us. We weren't sure what we were going to do if we had more freezes from the government funding, but for now we're able to carry on with our programs and whatnot this year, so that's good. Business process improvement, always front and center for us also, making sure that we're automating reports, making sure that we're adding technology, making sure that we're watching our cybersecurity side of things. I know that some municipalities have had some challenges with cybersecurity and ransomware attacks and that kind of thing. We're hearing that it's not if you get hit, it's when you get hit. So we're being very careful and cautious to make sure that we're training our staff and that we've got the right infrastructure in place so that we can manage things quickly if and when it happens. So those are things we're working on also. Myron had mentioned collective bargaining. We'll be doing that this year. And we do a lot of training and development also with our staff because we need accredited appraisers to do the valuations well and to stand up at appeals and be able to support those values and whatnot. So we have a lot of focus on training and development at SAMA. So key results for 2023, out of those 29 areas, we met or exceeded most of them. There were 2 or 3 that we weren't able to quite get to, but we will be carrying on to complete them in 2024. So this is 2024. You'll see the objectives are very similar to last year. Making sure that the system is ready for the 2025 revaluation is one of our key areas, of course, this year. And we're also, we'll start to look at our 2025 planning cycle as well as the next 4-year cycle, which 26 to 29 is going to come up soon enough. So we're going to be looking at that also this year. One of the things that you heard about yesterday, if you were at the administrator training session, is the assessment returns onto My SAMA portal. So that's a big change for us on the technology side of things. And if any of you were here yesterday and didn't quite understand things or have questions, both Danny and Carlo are here today also and can answer some more questions for you. On the partnership side of things, we're pleased and proud to be your partners in the property assessment system, and we're proud to be a partner with the province of Saskatchewan in supporting growth in Saskatchewan. Now, you've already seen this slide, and I don't want to spend too much time on it because not only do I want to be brilliant, but I want to be gone pretty quick here also. So that $182 million, $182.5 million, we're proud, again, to contribute to that and to make sure that those monies are continual monies that are being picked up, and that it's fair, it's a fair assessment system, and it's equitable. And those are the things that we really, really work hard on, and we care about them deeply. Important partnerships doing important work. Property assessment provides the foundation. Myron mentioned that, and it's really important that we understand how important this work is. And I'm so happy that the government and Minister McMorris has been so complimentary to SAMA and the work that we do, and it's much appreciated. To have that recognition of how important the property assessment is. And our stakeholder groups are so supportive also, SUMA, SARM, RMAA, and others, just very supportive of the work that we do. And we want to make sure that we continue that good work. And if there's things that you feel we could be doing, should be doing, please let us know. You can contact us in many different ways. We have got the website. We've got an email, info.request@sama.sk.ca. You can call us. You can call any one of the board members, executive team. And also, if you're looking for just resources, if you're new to assessment or new as an administrator or an elected official, and you don't understand assessment, we've got all kinds of information on our website, and it will be updated for the 2025 revaluation, of course. Right now, it's based on the prior cycle, but there's lots of information there, and we're happy to share that with you. So thank you again for attending in person and online, and invite you to ask any questions today or provide any information that you think we need to hear today. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to pass it over to Todd for assessment services update.
Thank you, Betty. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's great to be in here. I didn't even know this venue existed. I've been at Prairieland a number of times in the lower levels at SARM conventions of that, and I was surprised that this actually was up here. So yesterday we did the administrative training session. It's a great venue, and it's great to see you all here today. And for those of you online, although I can't see you, thank you for being online, and I hope you're able to hear us well as well. I see a number of familiar faces here today, and I've been around for a while. And so I started at SAMA May 1st, 1989. So if you want to do the math, I'm coming up on my 35th anniversary. So imagine this, first day at SAMA, pulling up in my Camaro in Regina for a training course, flowing red hair and a wave perm. I know it's hard to imagine, but for those of you that knew me at the time, that was true. The staff, I show them that picture every once in a while because it was on my ID card when I'd go out in the field, and I look at it and it's like, seriously, that's what I did look like? But anyway. I was reminiscing this morning. I was fortunate enough last night to stay at my daughter's place. She lives up here, and it's her birthday today, and it's her 29th birthday. And why is that significant? Because in 1995 was the first SAMA annual meeting. It was about 4 days before my wife and I were expecting our first child. I actually was on the SAMA board as the first ever Saskatchewan Assessment Appraisers representative on the SAMA board. So that was in the spring of 1995, and this is our 30th annual meeting. And I just was sort of doing the math last night. So it's pretty interesting to have been involved with SAMA as an employee for this many years. It's been a great career, and I've enjoyed working with many of you that are in here, and look forward to continuing to work with many of you as well. So I will get going. The purpose of my presentation today is to provide you with an update on what Assessment Services has been doing and what we're up to. So there's 4 key things we work on in Assessment Services, and that's when we're providing our services to you as our clients. So annual maintenance is a big one. That's where you provide your lists to us every year. There's certain properties we check, and that we check to put on the next year's assessment roll. And why, as Myron mentioned, there's a focus on trying to get you your annual maintenance when you ask for it. And I lost my presentation. Sorry. It's coming back up here. I'll get her. So Maintenance is important. That's one of the key things. Re-inspections is number 2. And that's when we go to a community and we actually review all the properties in that community at the same point in time, and then that usually gets delivered on the next assessment roll. There's also revaluations, and that happens every 4 years, and we'll be talking about that a lot today in other presentations as well. And the next reval is next year, and that's where we update the values to a more current base date. It's not a physical inspection of every property, it's just an updating of values based on the physical characteristics that we have on that property as of right now, and updating that value. And then there's supportive value, and that's where we support our assessment values, and there's various forms. People can appeal their property every year. In a non-reval year, there's 30 days to appeal your assessment after the assessment roll opens. In a revaluation year, there's 60 days to appeal your assessment. That could go to a board of revision. The board of revision, we will go, and first of all, we may be able to come to an agreement before we actually have to go to a board of revision. If there's a data error on the property, we can do what's called agreement to adjust, where we get the concurrence of the municipality, the appellant, and ourselves. We make the change. The appellant withdraws their appeal. The value gets changed on the roll. It doesn't have to go through the board of revision process, or it may go to a board of revision where the appellant can state their case. We'll support what we've done. The board of revision makes its decision. And then from that, that might be the end of it, or the appellant or the respondent, might be SAMA, sometimes we're the appellant, could take it to the next level, which is the Saskatchewan Municipal Board. And then that's a process where they review what happened at the board of revision. Once the Saskatchewan Municipal Board makes their decision, generally that's the final, but if there's a point of law that someone wants to take it further, it can go to the Court of King's Bench or appeals courts. So those are the 4 key things that we focus on in assessment services when providing service. Some statistics, we've touched on this a bit before, 762 municipalities. There's always a debate as to how many municipalities do we have. And the NSAD, Northern Saskatchewan Administration District, is a number of municipalities. Sometimes we lump them as one, and then it's a matter of how many there are, and there's northern hamlets, northern villages, but we finally landed on, we're at 762 today. So from this day forward, at least at SAMA, we're going to be saying 762, and it matches what's on the Government of Saskatchewan website, so we're good to go there now. 876,000 properties, that's how many properties we value. 8 regional offices, as Betty mentioned, 164 permanent staff, and 119 of those staff are in the Assessment Services Division, located in some in central office, and then those 8 regional offices. Our regions, just graphically, provided here and where they roughly are. Color-coded, and I know we've got the Saskatoon region, looks like it's really expanded, and it's now the North Battleford region. So I was noticing last night that that slide needs to be updated, but there's a line in there, kind of in the middle of the big yellow area, and North Battleford is up there. We haven't lost it. This isn't an announcement that we've collapsed the North Battleford region, but those are our regional boundaries. Some regions, like Swift Current, we have some distance to go to some jurisdictions. Obviously, going down to RM51 and that from Swift Current, but this is how we're set up across the province, and we have staff in each of those communities living and contributing to the community and working in those communities. So sales verification, I thought I'd touch on that, and that's sort of part of that revaluation process. And since we have a market value assessment system, we use sales to come up with our assessments, and that's one of the things, our key ingredient when we're coming up with values. And we get all land titles transfers from ISC on a weekly basis, and then we need to go through them. We get every one of them. They could be arm's length, they could be non-arm's length, and we need to go through them to determine which sales are arm's length and which ones can we use in our analysis. So I've just put up some stats. If I go back to different revaluations, and we usually have a base date, well, we have a base date, and then we usually use four years worth of sales prior to that when we were establishing our assessment models. So for 2013, we had about 203,000 total sales in the province. Then in 2017, it bumped up to about 215,000. So there was a few years of growth in there, I think in 2013 and 14, so more sales activity. 2021 reval, we saw a bit of a drop off to 197,000, and this is over that 4-year period. And then in 2025, we had less sales. So that doesn't mean that we can't produce accurate assessments. It's just sort of showing that there was a trend in less sales in the province. If we look forward to the 2029 reval, so the sales that happened in 2023 would be the first year of sales we'll use for that reval, 44,000 sales. So that was last year. we're seeing less sales, probably due to higher interest rates, and it's just kind of interesting looking at the trends. So we typically have 44 to 50,000 sales a year that we have to look at. Our staff are verifying them so that we can put those into our assessment models and calculate new assessments. So just thought I'd show you some of those stats. Supportive value, and Myron showed this slide, and it's basically how many appeals do we have in our jurisdictions. And what this is, the green bars are the actual year that I'm displaying beneath, and the blue bar beside it is 4 years prior, because we're on a 4-year cycle, so it's kind of interesting to see what happens from cycle to cycle. And of course, our big year for appeals was in 2017, 7,200 appeals. But you can see that tapering off in year 1 of a reval, more appeals, and then it drops off years 2, 3, and 4. So that's a typical cycle we see happening. Also, something I'd like to point out on the far right, the blue bars would be going back to 2010, 11, and 12, less than 1,000 appeals in our jurisdiction. And that didn't happen until recently, in 2022 and 2023, where we've saw less than 1,000 appeals in our jurisdictions. And the reason we track this is because it takes a lot of time to work on appeals. Typically, it takes about a day to do an appeal. So 7,200 appeals take 7,200 person days. That's less time we can spend on doing re-inspections and maintenance. So if we get slammed on appeals in any given year, our re-inspections and our maintenance decreases. And that's just the reality of it, because we have to deal with the appeals. So we use this for planning. If I'm a betting man, 2024, we're in it right now. Rolls are opening, rolls are closing. Based on the trend, we should have less than 1,000 appeals in our jurisdictions. So that just means we can spend more time this year on maintenance and re-inspections, which I hope is what happens. We'll never get a year with 0 appeals. It won't happen. But then 2025 is a reval year. So then it's a matter of saying, well, we anticipate, what do we think? It'll depend on how many shifts or what changes there are. But if we look at trends, obviously 2017 was 7,200 appeals. There was quite a bit of change in the markets at that time. 2021, we had about half that at about 3,500. So we're anticipating in the reval next year, hoping it would be in that 3,000, 3,500 or less. So we'll see how that happens. A year from now, I'll be able to stand here and tell you, or well, 2 years from now, I guess I'll be able to tell you how that shook out. SMB, that second level of appeal, I just wanted to point out similar stats where we've come from, and going back to the far right, the blue bars, that'd be 2010, 11, and 12. Generally, we only had 20 to 25 appeals go to the SMB. And then we saw an increase start in 2013, which was a reval year, and then 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and they became kind of a backlog of appeals at the SMB. And then they kind of got things sort of sorted out there. But what we're seeing, if you look over on the left side, 2022, 2023, we're not back in the days of 20 to 25 appeals at the SMB. We're into the range of 100 to 150 on a given year. And that's just a sign of the times, I guess. There's more tax agents involved in appeals. So that's why we're seeing an increase. And remember, those appeals usually happen the year after they're launched, because we go through the process in the municipality with the Board of Revisions. The decisions are made. They typically have to be made and should be made in the year that of the assessment roll. If it goes to the SMB, then the SMB generally starts looking at it late fall or early the next year. And so our staff sort of get pulled into those appeals to go back over what we did at the Board of Revision. So it all takes time. Our primary goal in 2023 was to review 100,000 properties. And that was for maintenance and re-inspection. And as Myron reported last year, we had a number of our staff working on analysis for the reval, we ended up at 93,650. So a little bit below where we wanted to end up. But I don't see it as a failure. If we look at it over time, and going back to 2012 and 13, we were struggling to do 50,000 properties a year. And our clients are saying, like, when are you going to get out and do some more re-inspections? There's things that are missing out there, and if you can't get out and do them, when are we ever going to pick this stuff up? So we put together a plan. We said we need some more money to invest in technology. We're going to change our business processes and simplify some of our models. And by 2018, we'll double our production. So we had a big goal set back in 2014 that we were going to double our production from 50 to 100,000 property reviews starting in 2018. And in 2018, we surpassed that goal. We did 105,000. 2019, we just made it to the 100,000. And then the provincial government came to us in 2019 and said, we like what you're doing. We're going to give you some additional funding, $650,000 in additional funding. Put it towards more inspection capacity. So we did that. We hired 7 appraisers, and we set our new target of 110,000 property reviews. So in 2020, surpassed that. 2021 was a reval year. We were a little bit under on our property reviews, mainly because of appeals. 2022, we're 111,000. We dropped our target in 2023 to 100,000 because of the analysis we needed to do for the reval. So that's why we had dropped it from that. But for 2024, our goal again now this year is 110,000 property reviews. So if you look at it over the 6-year period that since we started in 2018, with our goals, first couple years was 100,000, then we bumped it up to 110 after we got that additional funding, and then we went to 100,000 in 2023. 630,000 property reviews is what our goal was. We did about 634,000. So we're actually on track to our goal. So that's something we wanted to just sort of point out, is we've still provided those inspections that we planned on doing, and we want to continue delivering on that promise. Re-inspections for use in 2024, so the work we did last year that'll go on the rolls this year, 58,000 properties, 27,000 ag properties in 19.5 RMs, 1,200 commercial, 18,000 res, and then industrial had a number of properties. They did 1,300, and then a flow line review of 10,000. So a lot of properties got reviewed last year, and those will be going on the rolls now in your municipalities in 2024. And what we have planned this year for implementation in 2025. So even though we're doing a reval next year, there are re-inspections going on this year that will also get included in those reval numbers next year. So that's where we're updating that physical information. So 71,000 properties, so fairly aggressive this summer. So ideally, if the appeals are down, then we can definitely achieve these targets. And that's if we had a bunch of appeals, well, this might not happen, but this is what our plan is based on what we expect for appeals. 17 RMs, 2,000 commercial properties, 25,000 residential. And residential could be residential in an urban municipality. They could be farmhouses. They could be residential or seasonal at a resort area. That's lumped into that category. And then our industrial division is doing 1,140 properties and a flow line and tank review of about close to 16,000 properties. So all that goes into that, how many property reviews can we do in a year? So this is just a graphic look at our re-inspection counts. 2017 was kind of that year before we were trying to double our production. 2018, we bumped it up. This is just re-inspection. This does not include our maintenance, which is typically 35 to 40,000 properties, and where we've come from to. And then 58,000 last year. We had a few less inspections because of that prep for the reval and getting all that in place. And then now this year, we're hoping to be up around that 71,000. So just kind of a graphic look of where we've come from and where we've been performing at. I like to show things visually, and for those of you that like puzzles, this is our Ag Land Review program over the 6 years that we've been doing it. So obviously the colored dots are where we've completed Ag Land inspections. The white dots are the RMs that need to get done over the next 6 years. It looks like we're on about a 15-year cycle for Ag Land, just based on where we're at. So, but again, we're getting out there. All those RMs have been re-inspected, and all the assessments have been updated, and we're continuing to move through the province, typically age-based. So there are still some RMs out there that haven't been reviewed physically, the whole RM, for 30, 35 years, but we're working on them and getting to them. So eventually, after the 12 to 15 years, we'll start going back and reviewing the ones that we did starting in 2018. Maintenance and where we're at with that, and as Myron showed, on-time delivery of maintenance is important, and that's where we work with you. You set a date, and if we can't achieve that date, we try to negotiate with you to get it to you when we feel we can get it to you. Our goal is 85% on time, so last year we had 87% on time and 96% within 3 weeks. And I just looked at our stats yesterday. Right now we're at 85% on time. We've delivered about 75% of our municipal clients their maintenance for this year. And busy working on getting the rest of you out that don't have it already. And within 3 weeks, we're at 92%. So continuing to focus on that. And it's been a struggle because we've had a number of staff out working on the analysis and getting the numbers ready for the reval. So still working with that. So if we haven't got your maintenance yet, hopefully we'll get it to you soon. And hopefully we've been talking to you about when we think we can get it to you. The roll status. So of those 762 rolls in our jurisdictions, 108 rolls have closed already. So we're finding out, how many appeals were there in those 108 rolls. And from the early indications, we're seeing a reduction in appeals, so that's good. That's a good sign for 2024, and we'll see how that goes. And that might be municipal specific, but ultimately we want to deal with those appeals and get them done and get moving. There's 230 rolls open right now, and those will be closing within the next 30 days. And there's 424 rolls not yet open, but I assume will be opening, as soon as they get their maintenance or they're in process to get them open, just to give you an idea where that's at. A client survey. We did a client survey last fall, and we've been doing them every 2 years since 2009, and it's a simple thing. We ask you, our clients, how we're doing. We sample about 20% of our clients, which is about 151 municipalities, and talking to the companies that do this, it's a random sample, and I mean, what it comes down to is cost. If we wanted to do all municipalities every time, they'd be 5 times the cost. So Betty only gives me so much money to do surveys. So this is what we've been doing, and they say these are, statistically it provides good results. So we've been doing this since 2009, and it's an actual phone survey where a live person talks to you on the other end of the phone and asks the questions of the person that deals with SAMA. It's not a survey monkey. There's very few companies, as I've learned, that do that anymore. Most companies do surveys electronically, but this way we can get verbatim comments and you actually talk to someone. So some of you in here may have any of you participated in that survey? Can you put your hands up if you want to put your hands up? So anyway, we did that in the fall. So on a 4-point scale, and we measure things and we ask questions around customer service and when our staff are working with you and that, and on customer service statements that are positive, you can see what happened in 2023. We were at 3.74, which was a bit of an increase from 2021. Our lowest year was 2017, and we delivered our reval late that year, and it showed in our survey results. But overall, really good stats. I'd be more concerned if that number was around 2 out of 4, which means that half of you are not happy with us. So 3.74 was we feel is a good score. It's something we can always improve on. Overall service satisfaction is high, and it typically has been. So 98%. On a 4-point scale, the overall service satisfaction, as you can see, 3.76. A bit of a drop from 2021, but still fairly high. Maintenance satisfaction overall, we had a bit of a dip from 97 to 94. You can see in 2017, which was the year we delivered, and I believe when Myron showed his slide in 2017, we were down about 18% on-time delivery, and our clients told us you don't like that, and I don't blame you, so that's when we put those measures in to try to achieve 85% on time. So something I look at on maintenance also, because we asked, well, did you feel your maintenance service from SAMA was excellent, good, fair, poor? Our excellent rating in 2023 moved up from 40% to 55%. So again, it's just a measure to see how do you feel our services are, and it's not everyone is happy with our service, and I don't blame them. If we deliver your maintenance late, we're going to hear about it. So it's something we'll continue to work on. Would you recommend SAMA? In 2021, everyone recommended us, and in 2023, there's a couple that say, well, maybe not. But anyway, that's just something we measure, but still high. You can't make everyone happy all the time, but it's something we measure and ask those questions. 2025, and you're going to be hearing more about this today, and Sean will be talking about trends, and we'll be talking about preliminary value packages. A couple of our managers are going to be up discussing that. Remember, that for 2025 assessments, the base date is, who's going to read it out? What's the base date for the reval next year? January 1, 2023. So we're trying to establish values as of that date. The market analysis is virtually complete, and we delivered our preliminary values to government relations, I believe, on March 27th, and that's a legislated date to get it to them before April 1st, and so we got them the preliminary values and the cities as well. So now government can start modeling and looking at, are they making any changes to the percentages of value, which we'll find out later this fall. And our plan now is to take those, get the maintenance done, and then get preliminary values out to you, our clients, by the end of June or sooner, so that you can start looking at what's happening in your municipality related to the changes in assessment as a result of the reval. And we're going to be talking about that today. Chandra and Sheldon will be kind of going over, you're going to be getting a package. Here's some of the things you're going to get, and we really want you to look at those packages and get a sense of what's going on in your municipality. And if something looks funny, contact us. We'll come out and do a meeting. We'll explain what we found in the market. And who knows, if there's something we need to change, it's easier to change it this year than wait till next year, and the way to change it is through appeal, and that's always time consuming. So pay attention to those packages when they come out, look them over, and you'll have a good session today here with our two managers, and we want you to pay attention to what's happening in 2025. Spoiler alert, farmland's going up 40%. Sorry, Sean. So thank you. It's great serving you, our clients. We're here for the rest of the day. One thing I'd like to do is thank the ASD management team. A number of managers are here today. Some of them can't be. They're busy doing things in the regions. But without them, my job would be a lot more difficult. So I really appreciate them being here and working with you as our clients as well. We have a lot of information on our SAMA website, www.sama.sk.ca. That's where there's manuals, handbooks, pamphlets, fact sheets, where you can look for things for the upcoming reval. There's a good video on property assessments, about 3 minutes long. It's good to show, review it, have property owners see it. It kind of gives them a feel of how the importance of property assessment and what we do. And we also have our SAMA View website, which is where you can go in and you can look at any assessment in any SAMA's jurisdictions, and check other people's properties out. You sign up for a subscription. Many of you probably have done that. So a lot of information on the web that people can use. So with that, thank you for your time today. And at this point, I'd like to call up for the Assessment Governance and Policy Update, Mr. Sean Cooney, our Chief Assessment Governance Officer.
Good morning, everyone. I too would like to thank everyone that came today and those online. It's a real privilege to get to present an update today on the work that we do. Todd was mentioning the amount of time that he worked at SAMA for, and I have 1 year on him. I like to remind him of that. But this is called an accidental profession. How do you get to be in assessment? And for me, it was a little more straightforward because my father started in the city of Saskatoon's assessment department in the 1960s. So we were talking the other day and he said, do you realize between the two of us, we have over 80 years experience in assessment? And looking back at that, even with that, the challenges are still the same. Even with all the technology, the work that we do is still a challenge. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we do in the policy area. And it's set out in legislation in the Assessment Management Agency Act. Of course, we're doing research, we're doing consultation, we're talking to stakeholders, but there's a theme to the work that we do, and it's around communication. So assessment policy isn't happening in a bubble, it's working through stakeholders, informing them of changes, such as assessment trends, which Andrew Workman will speak to later today. But the big thing is keeping stakeholders informed and our board as well in terms of assessment policy, making those recommendations, and of course the ministry. So Myron mentioned our advisory committees, and these are 4 groups that meet twice a year. There's an urban, rural, city, and commercial industrial advisory committee. If you have an opportunity to serve on one of these groups, we really appreciate it. This is the venue that we go where we're talking about assessment matters. We're looking for recommendations, and that's where we're getting a lot of valuable feedback, and we really appreciate it. So it's an ongoing dialogue. That doesn't happen in every province. A lot of policy in the other provinces happens in isolation. So we want to share what we're doing so that there are no surprises on the assessment front in terms of policy. And you can see below a list of the organizations. We have a lot of groups on these committees, and that's why it's got such good coverage for the work that we do. And that results in our publications. There's over 1 million properties in Saskatchewan, and every one of them is valued assessment-wise through one of the 3 publications that we maintain. We have a regulated manual, which has the force of law, and that's how we value all the regulated property that you see in the province. Railway, pipeline, oil and gas and mine RPE, heavy industrial, and agricultural land. So we, by law, have to follow the rates and the formulas in that manual. But on the market side of things, that's where sales and costs tell us how to value the properties. So properties that typically sell are valued using one of these two publications. We have a cost guide, which informs us on the cost approach, and the rental income approach. There's a best practices guide called the handbook. And the courts give a lot of deference to these guidance materials. So that's our core work that we do. If you're involved in assessment and taxation, you're an administrator or a counselor, this one slide has it all in terms of what is the foundation of everything that we do. And it's Latin, ad valorem means at the value. Our goal is to value property according to what we're finding in the marketplace. And we want to strive for a one-to-one relationship between what a property is selling for and how we assess it on an overall average basis. But it's really important to know we use mass appraisal. So we're valuing all the property, the million properties, at one point in time. It's not single appraisal. And I'm sure you get folks coming into your offices saying my assessment doesn't match what I sold my property for or bought it for. And that's simply because we're using mass appraisal. And equity is fundamental. So we just want to make sure that that property that we value is assessed fairly in relation to similar properties in the same neighborhood, the same market area. Really important to know is the objective. That value is there to just distribute taxes fairly. That's the purpose. It's not a bank appraisal. It's to make sure that everyone's treated fairly in terms of property taxes. And that's forgotten a lot of times in the work that we do. How do we keep it up to date? Well, Todd mentioned annual maintenance re-inspections. That's the physical side of things. Then every 4 years, we do something called the revaluation, and that's an economic update. And we're taking every value in the province and we're updating it by 4 years so it is closer to when we implement the revaluation, and it makes more sense to property owners. So this is an example of the physical growth through the maintenance and the inspections that we do, and this is just a one-year increase between 2023 and 2024, which we just reported, and it was $1.6 billion for SAMA's municipalities. So that's a lot of assessment that's being reported, and you can use an average mill rate to figure out what that means for property and education tax. So that's the ongoing work that happens on the inspection front. But today we're talking a lot about revaluation. And just a reminder, of course, values are constantly changing, and we want to capture a new value as of the base date, which is an economic point in time. The reason is we want to keep assessments understandable. So when you get that assessment notice, it means something. It's a little bit more current. We used to be on a system where you'd get your assessment notice and the value was 16 years in the past. So it meant absolutely nothing to you when you got it. There was no way of determining if it was fair. So we revalue every 4 years, and every province does it a little bit differently, but we're on cycles from 1 to 4 years. Ontario is on a 4-year, for example, and BC is on a 1-year cycle. And as Todd mentioned, the next base date, Jan 1, 2023, and we're going to implement in 2025. So a lot of work is happening. We're going to hear from the independent cities today and SAMA as well. We're busy getting these values updated. We got preliminary values coming out to our client municipalities. We want you to look at them, but we're not done yet. We're still working on that. But we do have an oversight role. So while the work is going on, we have various means of keeping track of the quality of that work. Myron mentioned the City Assessor SAMA Committee, and I really want to thank my colleagues on this committee. It's a tight-knit group. We're talking about assessment valuation issues, and we're trying to coordinate the work and build in the quality. And we have our analysts meet to discuss how we do our modeling to align the work as much as possible. And in SAMA, we have a revaluation team as well. While the revaluation is ongoing, we have quality assurance measures. We have quarterly reporting. We have a provincial audit that's ongoing, and we have quality assurance standards. So for every municipality represented here today, you have a quality assurance standard that is posted to SAMA's website, which is a check on that overall one-to-one level of value that I mentioned. And assessment trends, which we're going to speak to in detail later today. It's in legislation that we have to communicate assessment trends to our stakeholders. And today you're going to get a glimpse of what is going to happen in 2025 with property values. And that's always important because you want to know what happens when you put out those new assessment notices. And here is just a really quick look at the 8 classes of property for the entire province of Saskatchewan. And we are seeing an 18% increase overall. And that's a really, really good sign, because the previous base date was January 1 of 2019. The current base date is Jan 1, 2023. And in between those 2 points in time, we had a major occurrence called COVID, pandemic. And it shut down society, it shut down businesses, and it really, really negatively impacted property values. So we were kind of just waiting to see what was going to happen when we update by these 4 years. Thankfully, the market's recovered, and we're seeing all areas returning kind of to the status quo. And as Todd mentioned, a 40% increase in ag land on top of that. So that's a really strong sector, and then the regulated sector is doing good. And properties that sell, like our houses, are back to where they should be. So Andrew will speak to that in a little bit more detail. There is a major review of the assessment system, and we talked about this last year, and it was a report commissioned by SUMA to look at the entire assessment taxation system in the province of Saskatchewan. They commissioned the International Property Tax Institute, and it's an international body with expertise in assessment and taxes, and they came out with a report, and it is massive, like it's 342 pages, and they came up with 8 options for change. And they said these are 8 areas that you could consider possibly amending for the province of Saskatchewan. Any of the changes will happen after the 2025 revaluation. But what SUMA did is they created a working group, and the group focused on 4 fundamental options for change. And they issued their report internally within SUMA, and I have their permission to share the results on these 4 items. One is to remove the provincial percentages of value for the 8 classes of property and to collapse it so everything is at 100% of value. And so that was recommended. The second was to shorten the revaluation cycle. So the work that we're doing in 2025, if we went to a 2-year cycle, we'd be doing it 2 years hence type of thing. And so it's a more frequent updating of values, and with that come additional costs and administrative considerations. The other one kind of tied to that is to shorten the base date. We call it base date lag, but it's the period between the base date and implementation date. It's currently 24 months, and can we make it 16 or 12 months? And then shorten it up and make the values a bit more current when they're implemented. So again, there's some budgetary and practical considerations for that. The last one was true market value for regulated property, and one of the recommendations from IPD was consider using market data to value all the regulated property. And that is problematic because we don't have a lot of sales of railways and potash mines. They are typically valued with the cost approach, and that's what's in our regulated manual. And the working group said no to that one. They said, let's keep with the regulated standard, which we have in Saskatchewan. So that's positive. So SUMA is going to do additional consultation internally on that. And the key thing is we need proper planning. The last time we made a major change to the assessment system to bring in the market, it took 5 years of advanced planning. We need to consider funding and having enough appraisers to do the work, and there's a shortage of skilled appraisers. I'll just very quickly touch on new technology. Myron and Todd alluded to GIS, Geographical Information Systems. It's revolutionizing the work that we do, and I'm sure everyone's seen mapping to do with GIS. So we're working on a 4-year strategic vision for GIS at the agency, and it's going to start to become more prominent in the work that we do. And already, if you work with SamaView, it is an amazing, powerful tool. The big thing is the amount of money that you put into GIS pays huge, huge dividends in the work that we do for efficiency and that type of thing. A couple quick examples. Again, SamaView, you can look at a property, you can have a cadastral map, you can bring in a satellite map, and the purpose of this is we really want people to understand their assessment and look at similar property in your area to see if you're assessed fairly, like we talked about. You can order reports, and you can really do a lot of research through SamaView. So that's revolutionized a lot of our work. This is an example of an Ag GIS program, and you can see here a bit of a graphic. We're now looking at mapping all the water bodies in the province of Saskatchewan using this process, permanent water bodies. We want to fully digitize all of our ag mapping. We've got scrolls of rolled up paper. We're moving from that, and within 8 years, everything will be electronic, which is huge for the work that we do. Pictometry. This is another really amazing tool. We can use high-resolution imagery to look at a property at different points in time, and it can actually tell us if there's been an addition or a change to the property in terms of the size. And then we can use this application to measure the property, and then we can use an orthographic oblique to do the measurement. So looking from an angle to be able to measure the height of a building. Really incredible. The last one, and this is like really, really interesting for us that work in this field, is called ARC Insights. This is a tool where we can do our analysis in real time, and we can look at your community and we can see what does that mean for the assessments in that town, village, city. And we can color code it. So we can look at sales, we can look at the analysis, and you can also generate trends. So, we can get assessment trend maps into your hands, and if we can do it for the 2025 revaluation, you're going to know in advance where the hot spots are. And our goal would be to do that for preliminary values. So you could actually say back to us, hey, did you check out these properties? They're standing out a bit more than others. A couple final slides talking about challenges and risks. And Myron and others spoke of the appeal situation, and it has been a real struggle over a couple revals. And I've got some statistics. You can see in the 2017 reval, 16,000 appeals, and that's come down to 6,000 in 2021. So that's very positive. The big item we're watching is the Court of Appeal. So we had 31 Court of Appeal challenges, and that's where those legal costs skyrocketed. For this cycle, we're down to 9. It's still 1 year left, but we've got 9. So that's a huge decrease, and that's because we're getting these really good stated cases, and the rules of the road and the law and the precedent is now being set forth. The other good thing is the appeals life cycle. When we went to the Court of Appeal, from the time the Board of Revision started in your community to the time we got the Court of Appeal decision was 3 years. By that time, we were on to another revaluation. We had our analysis done, and it was too late to implement the court's decisions, down to 500 odd days there. So that's an improvement. The one thing I would point out, appeals are going down, but our costs are still high because they're becoming far more complex. And when we do have an appeal now, we find out that it's typically a very sophisticated, high-value property owner, and they've got, tax agents, and that's their job, is to get the assessment lower. So we need to bring in our solicitors, and we're now focusing less on assessment, what should the value be, and more on the procedures and the rules and the technicalities. It's almost like a typical court situation versus let's just get the right assessment. But we're working through that. The one thing I'll highlight is provincially, at this point in time, we have close to $6 billion before the Saskatchewan Municipal Board and the Court of Appeal. That is a large sum of assessment that is hanging in the balance. And if you use a mill rate, you can understand the tax implications. And that's the other message, I think, for certainly the larger municipalities, is just to be aware that we're not going to win all the appeal cases. We're very successful, but there's times when we're not as successful, and that impacts tax revenues. So those are some of the challenges that we're working through. This is just a graphic of how things have come down. And so we had 31 Court of Appeal challenges down to 9, and that's the purple at the very top of the chart. And those are SAMA's appeals. I'll close off with just a couple risks that we're looking at. And part of the work we do is monitoring the risks and challenges for the system. One thing our service providers are telling us, and this is SAMA and the 4 independent cities, it's really hard to recruit appraisers into our profession, and that's a challenge. The other one we're finding is we're doing this assessment work, we're doing the modeling, we're using mass appraisal, and we use multiple regression analysis. So we need model builders, people skilled in this. They're highly valued and hard to find. So we're actually going outside of the province and outside of Canada to find an individual in particular that's doing this work for us, and a lot of us are relying on that. So we want to train up our own resources for that work. Our resources are really, really stretched. So we've got our core work. We've got the inspections, we've got the appeals, and now we've got a revaluation. So everyone is feeling the impact of that. The last thing, and Betty talked about CAMA systems, computer-assisted mass appraisal systems. This is the heart and soul of the work that we do. If all of the tools and resources we have are a car, the CAMA system is the engine. And that's what allows us to value those 1 million properties at a single point in time and update them. And so the systems are aging. The technology is costly, so we have to always be mindful, planning for new upgrades and replacements. And that's something that all service providers are challenged with. So with it, that is my update. I want to thank you again for the chance to talk. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And later, if you want to track myself down or Andrew Workman and TS&P, we'd be happy to talk with you. Thank you very much. And I'll introduce Matthew Ratch from Finance.
Hey, thank you for that, Sean. And just like every year, after an hour and a half of speakers, you get me at the end for just a few minutes. And those of you that have been to these meetings, and as discussed, we always get your feedback at the end. And we actually do look at that and look at implementing improvements all the time. So whenever mine's evaluated, the positive comments are usually like, he was very brief, which was good. Or he didn't delay us from getting to a break or to lunch, which was appreciated. So trust me, no one in this room is happier than I am to tell you that I don't have a long auditor's report to present with a lot of financial problems in it. So just a bit of background on SAMA, where we come from. As Betty had mentioned, SAMA was established way back in 1987 under the Assessment Management Agency Act. And there is a requirement in there that SAMA does need to be audited by an external qualified and licensed auditor. That process is done through a competitive tendering process, and our current auditor is MNP, who has done the contract now for 3 years. They are audited in accordance under the Canadian accounting standards for non-profit organizations, and that's because we are of course, established as an agency. We're not part of a government ministry. And the audit is done under generally accepted auditing standards. And as briefly mentioned, I'm very happy to report it's a clean audit. If you go to page 37 in the annual report, you will see the auditor's report, the financial statements, and all of the notes. There was no misstatement or fraud or anything like that found, or lack of controls for SAMA, which we've had every year. Speaking on the funding side of things, we have two of our major funding sources provide up to 96%, or did provide 96% of our revenues for 2023. The biggest one being the provincial grant at $11.388 million is half of the money. The theory on the provincial government funding is that they have two parts that they pay for. The government has a vested interest in the governance function, and they are solely responsible for the governance costs. But beyond that, they do recognize that the education sector does gain a lot of dollars through property tax. And so with that in mind, they pay also for part of the assessment services function because they do receive the benefit of it. On the municipal side, we have the 762 municipal clients that all but one receive a municipal requisition. One of them is, of course, the City of Moose Jaw, which is done under a special contract. And every municipality receives that bill once a year, and it's just a all-in, one-time only bill for your services for that year. So even if you have a lot of appeals or a lot of activity, you're getting a reinspection, you have a lot of maintenance, there is a maintenance charge per property that you see on the following year. But your bill does not vary greatly from year to year based on those things. We bring stability to it. And then finally, on the other category, just 4% of it, we basically have three major components of that. The first one being the sale of our data that we use, that we sell it to different organizations that like to get that information. We do some special assessment services contracts for places such as First Nations that aren't on our part of our municipal system. And then finally, we do earn interest on our bank balance. Again, the nature of the funding, it tends to come in largely at the start of the year and then is expended throughout the year. On the expenditures side of things, as mentioned earlier, salaries and benefits is close to 3/4 of every dollar that we spend. Again, we're a professional service provider, so that is our number one area. Our second largest one, and has just exceeded $2 million per year recently, is on the technology, licensing, and services side of things. That's 9% of our spending. So that involves licensing, hosting, the outsourcing, software development, all the applications that you hear us talk about or use, the governance system, MySAMA, SAMAView, and again, 9%, that's an area that has been increasing bit by bit over the years. Our office spaces, we have 8 regional offices and a central office. That's 9 different offices that are leased throughout the province. That's $1.4 million per year. Legal and professional is 4% of our spending in 2023, over $900,000. The vast majority of that is the lawyers that are brought in for appeals, although that has been trending down, still a very significant cost for SAMA. And then travel is another one where we've spent $660,000 last year. Keep in mind, we're a very large province. Our staff drive just about 1 million kilometers a year, crisscrossing everywhere to do the physical inspections of properties that need to be done. And then the other category down to 5%. For 2023 expenditures, again, we always have to keep in mind we're trying to provide value for our stakeholders. We need to make sure we're not growing quicker than the province is or a lot quicker than inflation. We know, as mentioned earlier, when those bills come, there's always the question, why does it cost what it costs, and is it going up a reasonable amount or not? Because as we know, our costs are always going up year after year. So this is just a quick slide to show you that our revenues increased overall in 2023 from just under 22 million to 22.67 million, 3.25%. And the expenditures rose 2.7% from 22.46 to over $23 million. And during that time, you have to pick some type of benchmark to compare that to for inflation. So picking the consumer price index for 2023 on an average annual basis, there's monthly measurements, et cetera, but on the overall annual, that was 3.9%. So we came in quite a bit under inflation, and as well, our revenues actually grew a little bit quicker than our expenditures. The good news on that side was that closed the gap of our deficiency of revenues over expenses from year to year down to 400,000. It had been over $500,000 the year before, and so your next question would be, well, how does SAMA deal with the deficiency? From reserves. So we funded that by taking $400,000 out of reserves. With the provincial funding freeze and other changes over the last 3 years, we've taken actually over $1.5 million out of reserves since 2020 over that time, leaving us with current reserves at the end of 2023 of just over $2.5 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but keep in mind with our budget, that's approximately 1.5 months of operating expenses that we have on hand for anything unforeseen or for emergencies. Looking at the current year, the financial picture right now, again, all municipalities have received their municipal requisition, and we thank you for that, and the majority have paid us already, which is great to see. And that increased this year from 9.74 million to 9.99 million. That was an average increase of 2.5%. Again, some municipalities saw even a decrease or no change, and some have seen a larger increase, especially if you're a growing municipality with a lot of economic activity there. And the provincial grant, very happy to report that has increased from 11.388 million to 12.288 million. That's a 7.9% increase. That was our first increase since the year 2020. And with that, we now forecast for the first time since 2020, we're not going to have to use reserves to fulfill our plan, that being both the 4-year and the annual plan. We'll be able to move forward as planned, fully funded, and should be around a break-even basis for the current year. And again, that will be the first time we've done that since the year 2020. Looking ahead for 2025 and beyond, we're currently in the budgeting process, and SAMA does not create their budget just within a bubble and then send it out to everyone saying, that's our budget, that's what it is. We consult back and forth with our board members who also represent these organizations, but also externally with those organizations, with SARM, SUMA, and the province. And that consultation process will be ongoing over the next few months, and our budget will be finalized before September 1st. Additionally, we are going into next year, will be the last year of our current 4-year funding plan. And at this time next year, we will be well underway, getting close to finalizing our 2026 to 2029 plan. And the major risks that we're looking through in that time are, of course, legal costs. In the previous halfway through the current reval cycle compared to 4 years prior is when we ended up at a point where we saw our legal costs going up 300% to 400%. We used to be under $200,000 a year, which we thought was quite a bit at that time, and then up to a high of nearly $800,000. We're back down now to a little over $500,000 per year, but that just shows how quickly that can change. And as you saw on the chart, even though the number of appeals was going down, the simple appeals were going down. The complex ones, the ones where we had to bring in lawyers and could spend sometimes up to $40,000, $50,000 on one major appeal, those kept going up. And so we'll see what comes out of the 2025 revaluation. And as we've noted in the past, the legal costs probably won't be in that first year. It often takes 1 to 2 years for that to get through and end up at a higher level of appeal before the very high legal costs come into play. The second one is we've already talked about is also labor cost and inflation uncertainty. Our current in-scope staff, their CBA expired at the end of last year, so we will be going into negotiations soon. And we need to keep an eye on inflation levels. We need to see what's happening with other bargaining groups, what kind of settlements they're coming in at. And as well, not just doing that, but also just doing the best we can for our staff. We need to recruit and retain our highly trained and hardworking staff to be a successful organization. And then on the technology side, as we've seen year after year, technology costs, there's always new technology and the costs continue to go up. And that's not only a risk, but it's also an opportunity. We need to be always looking around the corner to see what new technological innovations are out there, what can make us more efficient or provide better data for assessments. And so we have to be ready to invest when necessary, when the time comes. And just finally, just to reiterate what our board chair and CEO have also said, as we go into the planning, we have to do that in step with the province. And we see that the province is talking about their goals, and we're seeing that in all of our communities. We're seeing the population grow, we're seeing the number of jobs go up, and we're seeing exports rise. All of those things are going to demand more services from municipalities and from the province. And as SAMA, as the assessment service provider of most of the municipalities in Saskatchewan, we need to be there doing our part to making sure we have a cost-effective and reliable assessment system that all these municipalities and the province rely on. And again, thank you. I'll be around the room all day. If you have any questions about anything in the financial report or otherwise, feel free to ask or catch up with me at lunch or on a break. But at this time, we'll also have a short Q&A session, I think, and John will lead us in that and take questions from the floor.
Okay, thank you, Matt. We have microphones out there. When you come to the microphone, just state your name and what organization you represent, and also the Slido apps there. If you have questions you want to ask, anything for Myron, Betty, Todd, Sean, or Matt. No? Okay. Well, the next thing on the agenda here, actually, I'm here. I'll now call on Chandra Riley. Chandra's the manager for the North Battleford region, and Sheldon Statistician is the manager for the Yorkton region, and they're going to present a session on the important information in your 2025 preliminary values package. So Chandra and Sheldon.
You don't want to miss this.
There you go.
Oh yeah. Thank you, everyone. Good morning today. Good to see so many of you here in person, and if you're here attending SAMA AGM for the first time, welcome, and for everybody else, welcome back. My name is Sheldon Statistician. I'm the regional manager of the Yorkton office of SAMA. Today I have with me Chandra Riley. She's the regional manager of the North Battleford region. We are excited to speak to you about the 2025 reval packaging reports we'll be sending. Their targeting is the end of June, beginning of July. We'll start sending out those reports to municipalities. So, yeah, it's been 4 years, and just when the smoke and dust has settled from last reval, we are preparing to send out new packages. So now, just taking a look at our agenda, our presentation is 20 to 30 minutes. Allow some time for questions at the end. There's a microphone there, so please come to the microphone so that people at home can hear the question as well. Or if you want to talk to us, just be discreet about your questions. We're available throughout the rest of the day. The 3 reports we'll be displaying are the same as other revaluations. We're going to include an executive summary. Chandra will speak about that, and potentially some shift maps that we were talking about with that ARC Insights. These reports, just repeat again, it's not for public distribution. They're intended to provide council with a sneak peek of what the revaluation values look like. We'd like to hear from you, so your feedback is important to uncover some potential issues or something that we may not have noticed as you mine into the packages there. But I just want to stress again how important it is to preview them. As Todd said, it's easier to fix it now than while it's under appeal, any of the changes. So please make sure the council is aware of what's happening on their assessment roll. And the first one is the assessed value trend report. Getting right into that, this structure hasn't changed from other years. These reports, I'll repeat again that they're fictional as far as values and the percentage changes. And you'll hear more about the trends later on. Spoiler, as Todd said, farmland is going up 1.4 times, so. Yeah, so as you can see at the top part of the trend report, we give the actual values. There's the blue and yellow. Blue dictates what is happening within your community. Yellow is on the provincial level on the graph. And then we have some narrative on the bottom of that there, so. I think the next one is Chandra's. There you go.
Okay, so I can see that you're probably shuffling some papers. So we're looking at the 2025 taxable assessed value report. I'll give you a moment to locate that report. All right, sounds like we're probably all there. Again, some of you have already seen this from yesterday. So what we have here are the taxable roll totals. So as council members, mayors, and reeves, this is something of interest to you. This is the taxable assessed value. So what we have here at the top, we're comparing the 2024 taxable assessed values and exemptions, including 293 exemptions, to the 2025. If you are from an urban municipality, you may not be familiar with what a 293 exemption is. It's a section of the Act that deals with agricultural exemptions. So from this report, you can look at either the exact totals, looking at the total value to the new total value, taxable value. Use the right language for that. And you can also look at the percentage change. So the total change per class. You can see the previous year's exemptions, and we'll give you an estimated 2025 293 exemption and exemptions amount there for you. And in the very last column on the right, you can see the percent change. Of course, we accompany that with a nice visual graph for you. You can think of this as like a piece of a pie. Each of these blocks are a piece of pie and make up the total taxable assessments for your communities. With the changes in the assessment for 2025, the blue colors, my apologies, wrong button. The blue colors represent decreases in the taxable assessed value of those properties, and a yellow is going to represent an increase. Contained within this report are descriptions and important information. It's going to explain what each of the column definitions are, what it's telling you. Some important 293 exemption information in there as well. So that's just to accompany you in understanding what each of those columns means. But we hope that you remember what we've taught you today.
The assessed value change report is essentially like we're talking about the other reports. This one is mining down into what's happening with the nitty-gritty of your municipality with the reval changes. The other two reports that show a different level of the shift that's occurring, you know, at a provincial level, at a municipal level, and now this is mining down into the property level there. So this is similar to what's displayed on your assessment roll summary, and it's comparing the assessed value by property, by tax class, and displaying the change in value 2024 to 2025. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. Something new that we have for you this year, this revaluation we're really excited about. So we wanted to find a way that we could better reach you and better raise issues or properties or shifts that you might want to be aware of. So in front of you, you have an example of the revaluation executive summary. I'll just give you guys a few moments to find that. I'm hearing excitement already. I like that. We're really excited too. So what this executive summary is intended to do is highlight things that we as the assessor may identify as a potential issue, concern, or maybe you're going to have a lot of phone calls from constituents, those types of things. So I'm going to lean this over a little bit because I can't read my printout. So we give you some important information here at the top. These are important dates and the explanation of a revaluation. As we mentioned, this is not a case where SAMA is physically inspecting every property in the province. This is an economic update only. Of course, these shifts will include potential physical changes, any re-inspections that SAMA might be performing for you, and they will contribute to that detailed report that we're talking about just last. So some important information and dates there for you. And as the assessor, we ask ourselves a few questions in order for us to give you some right up front information. We want you to be very aware of whatever it is we're putting in this report. So one of the questions we're going to ask ourselves is, what are the key property types or assessment trends that this municipality should be aware of? Let's say, for example, we see a large shift in a particular neighborhood. We're going to highlight that and bring that to the surface for you right out the gate. What is changing considerably compared to 2021? Again, we might see a dramatic shift in potentially a market adjustment factor or a land rate where we're seeing sales sort of showing a new trend that could potentially cause some concern. What is changing considerably compared to the provincial trend and why? So as you've looked through these reports, we're always giving you a provincial trend as well and comparing it to your municipal. And we will be able to tell you why yours might be different dramatically from the provincial trend. And lastly, we're going to ask, are there any specific properties that have changed significantly since the last revaluation? Again, this is kind of getting at that detailed report. We're going to look at those and give you a reason why this particular property increased 200% or decreased 50%. So we'll be able to highlight those for you. And we'll also be providing a last little visual there for you again. So we really hope you take heed on those reports and read them through and raise your concerns with us, schedule presentations so we can talk about those things, and again, make those adjustments now than a year from now.
Yeah, so that's a shift map on the screen there, and I spoke a little bit about those yesterday. Those are new and in the works for us, so we hope to have those out. And the shift map will be like a heat map, and the colors on there, the warmer colors typically represent an increase in value, and the cooler colors represent a decrease in value. So the more intense the color, the more significant the increase or decrease. So that'll give you the visual of where hotspots are within your community, Might be a change in a neighborhood, might be specific types of properties. You have a look at that report there. We have another map here of a city, but we want to bring that to council. One of the things for you and council to recognize is how properties are shifting as a result of the reevaluation. Not all properties react to market changes in the same manner, and SAMA doesn't create this market. SAMA reports and incorporates the market into the assessed values. So the market is created by the sales we use to develop assessment models so that the sale prices that the ratepayers paid for sold properties is what we're modeling. On a provincial level, property types such as agriculture and non-arable or an arable land have been changing at different rates in commercial properties and residential properties. With valuation changes on a municipal basis, we see some communities are declining while others are rising in values. So some might not show much of a change, so we'll highlight those in those executive summaries for you as well. With specific property changes to assessment, one should be comparing similar types of properties. The notions that all properties go up at the same rate or pace or percent is not necessarily the reality of the market. Comparable similar properties we expect to change at the same rates. So properties that aren't changing at the same rates are probably not identical in every aspect. And ratepayers tend to focus on that. So just remember that properties can be different and changing at different rates. Previewing your preliminary values will help you and a council identify certain issues with certain properties. So it's very important for council to see these reports and what shifts are occurring and discuss maybe what tax tools that you will use to mitigate such shifts. This concludes our presentation for you. I don't know if there's any questions. We're going to answer that if there was anything on Slido there. It sounds like we're a hungry bunch here, and if there's no questions, just a reminder again, Chandra and I will be around, or any of the SAMA staff will be around to answer any questions that you might have this afternoon. And stay tuned for the end of June, July for the reports. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheldon. Chandra, no questions at all for that? Okay. It looks like the next thing we have here is our lunch. Now, Prairie Land will come to your table and to tell you when to go for the buffet. So I will remind you one thing. I learned something the other day, that when your wife looks at you and says, "What did you just say?" it doesn't mean that she didn't hear you. She's giving you a chance to change what you just said. So, on that note, we will. Why are you applauding, Betty? On that note, just feel free to visit with each other. We will be back here at 1 o'clock. The staff will come get you when it's your turn to dish up at the buffet. So thank you. If you could please take your seats, we'll start our program here. If you're, I think they're supposed to be putting up the agenda for this afternoon. We're going to do a presentation on the life of an appraiser, an update from the assessment jurisdictions, and then the 2025 value trends, and then the session with the board. We don't have any resolutions, so that won't happen this afternoon. So. At this time, I'd like to call on Kirsten Benroth to come up and give us a session on the life of an appraiser. Kirsten is an administrative assistant in our reval unit. So, Kirsten, you're coming? Okay. I also see the Prairie Land staff out there. Let's give them a round of applause for that excellent meal. Thank you. Kirsten?
Well, good afternoon. As John said, my name is Kirsten Benroth. I'm an admin assistant in the revaluation department, and I get the prime nap time slot here this afternoon. So I'm pleased to be presenting Life of an Appraiser. Which way do I hold this, guys? There we go. So last fall, as part of SAMA's annual staff meeting, the Planning Committee wanted to put together a short presentation on how the various departments within the agency work together and give a little insight into what everyone does. But what started as an idea to have a quick presentation quickly turned into a maze of boxes, lines, circles, and scribbles through the entire agency. Who we are. This is the boring part. It's like the terms and conditions on every app you download. SAMA is an independent agency that provides a quality assessment system that is responsible to the province, local governments, and property owners. SAMA develops, implements, and supports property assessments, which are the financial foundation for the property tax system. And this property tax base provides over $2 billion in revenues for municipalities and the education sector. The journey of an appraiser starts with a fictional vacancy in one of our regions. SAMA has 8 regional offices in the province. There's Melfort, Moose Jaw, North Battleford, Regina, Saskatoon, Swift Current, Weyburn, and Yorkton, along with our central office in Regina. And there's also an industrial department that works out of our central office. Todd stole all of that from me. The fine people that you see here are the regional managers, as well as Todd Treslin, the Managing Director of Assessment Services, the big cheese, if you will, and Kevin Grote, the assistant managing director. The assistant cheese, because he doesn't want to be called the little cheese, and he's my boss, so I have to be nice to him. Before the position can even be advertised, there's some background work that needs to be done. The regional manager consults with Todd, who will in turn check with the CEO, HR, and finance to make sure that there are funds available to fill the position. In the example we're using today, the board, seen here and introduced a few times, would have approved the funding for the position in the 4-year plan that was submitted and approved previously. Our current 4-year plan is for 2022 to 2025, and this year they've already started to work on the next plan for the years 2026 to 2029. These plans are where SAMA and the board try to forecast the amount of dollars and staff they'll need to meet our goals and objectives. Basically, they try to make sure we have enough money to get the job done. We don't generally add extra positions when the need arises, as SAMA typically does not deviate from the number of positions in the previously approved 4-year plan. There are 7 members of the board, 2 are elected from SUMA, 2 from SARM, and 3 are appointed by the Minister of Government Relations, one of which is the board chair, Myron, and who you heard from earlier today. The board generally meets once a month, and for those of us in central office, that's when we see the executives in their suits and ties and nice outfits. Besides the board members, all of the executive team attend as well. There's Betty Rogers, Todd Treslin, Darcy Boyer, Matt Ratch, Sean Cooney, Brad Austin, Peter Ryan, Carlo Simonson, and Kareen Charco. If Todd can't attend, because he also farms with his family, Kevin Grote attends for him. Not only do the board members have their regular monthly meeting, but they also attend the AGM and advisory committee meetings. And there's also 2 board planning sessions a year in addition to all other meetings. I know that I said earlier that Todd is the big cheese, but really it's Betty. She's the biggest cheese. Betty reports directly to the SAMA Board of Directors and is responsible for basically everything at the top level. She makes sure, with the help of the executive team, that everyone and everything is on track, that we're following all the rules and regulations, and that the initiatives and projects the agency takes on are feasible, both in terms of staffing and funding. All the managing directors of each division report directly to Betty, as well as Corrine, the executive coordinator, and Peter, the communications coordinator. And these two are the ones that put on the AGM. Good job, guys. With the exception of the managing director of quality assurance, he reports directly to the board, and I'll explain more of that a bit later. The funding has been approved, and it's time to advertise the position. Now it's time for HR to get involved. In our small but mighty HR department, we've got Brad Austin, the director, and Maria Santamaria, our HR consultant. HR also includes Marie Mazzaros and Charlotte Trifo as our organizational development team, but I'll talk about them a little bit later as well. HR advertises the position, goes through all the applicants, and creates a short list of people that look like they're going to be a good fit. Then they set up interviews with the top contenders. The regional manager is involved in those interviews and ultimately makes the final decision on who gets hired. And our new hire is Miss A. Assessment. We'll call her Anna. She starts in 2 weeks. It's time for all the background work to begin to onboard Anna. IS creates a profile for her and gets her set up on a ToughPad. Those are the handheld devices that our appraisers use in the field. Finance creates a profile in the payroll system, ensures she has office space and a cell phone, and HR completes all new employee forms, and they also send out an email to the rest of the agency announcing that she's joining. If the CEO and the board are the brains of our operation, HR is the backbone. They're responsible for recruiting, selecting, and retaining employees, training and development, personnel records management, as well as compensation and benefits programming and administration. They make sure there's compliance with employment standards, the collective bargaining agreement, and the policies of the agency. They don't just do all that, though. They're also in charge of workforce planning. The job must come with a crystal ball. They help employees develop their careers and keep up with the ever-changing world of policy and employee relations. I briefly mentioned finance and what they do to onboard a new employee, but that's not all they do. The finance division is also small, with only 5 people, led by Matthew Raj. They might be a small group, but without them, SAMA would grind to a halt. They're involved with everything, from setting up new employees with everything necessary to get paid, making sure all the agency's bills are paid, and paying all the travel and meal expenses. So there's about 50 of those per week because so many people have traveled to appraise their municipalities. Right down to making sure that there's office space, a chair, a desk, and a phone to use. Bottom line, we have to be nice to these guys. And now IS. The most reclusive of all the divisions. These are the people that keep us running. They tend to stick to themselves on the 3rd floor of our central office. They're never seen and hardly heard from except by email or on Microsoft Teams. If they happen to be seen in the office, they're most likely to be followed by whispers of, "Who's that? I've never seen them before. Do they work here?" And my personal favorite, which I've actually said, they've been here for how many years? We've got Darcy Boyer, who leads the charge and manages the 3 main services that IS provides: the Saskatchewan Property Assessment Network, internal services, and external services. So the Sask Property Network, it's our main database that we call Govern. It has various applications, reports, and doodads included. There are 6 main people that work on Govern, but also included in this group is our GIS specialist and 2 people who make up the enterprise architecture team. The first time I heard the term enterprise architecture, I just stared at Darcy. Basically, enterprise architecture, it's a term for making sure that all of our systems, different systems and programs work together in the most efficient and cost-effective way. The enterprise architecture team also manages projects for new tools and programs and acts as, for lack of a better word, translators between IS and assessment services. They can translate what we need in assessment services into technical or programmer terms and language, or as I like to call it, tech speak. Then we've got 3 internal services people, 2 of which are here today actually. These 3 oversee all hardware and software, procuring it, installing it, and supporting it. They do tech support for not only our day-to-day office programs, but also for the systems or programs that finance and HR use. They also handle all data storage and server support. The external services supported by IS include access to our data by other assessment service providers, provision of assessment information to the province, and SamaView. And we can't forget our web administrator. She looks after both our internal website, SamaNet, and our external Sama website. All right, orientation. So during her first week, Anna is met by her hiring manager, and Human Resources conducts orientation. During orientation, there's an overview of how we operate as an agency, an introduction to the culture at Sama, and a review of critical policies. There's also an overview of our time reporting system and training delivery, as well as agency benefits and a union introduction. What does an appraiser do? For most of us in the room, this isn't new information, but a few of us might not know or have anything to do with actual assessment of property. So here's a little refresher for those who might need it. Boiled down to the most basic, assessment appraisers collect and verify property values and sales information through physical inspections and personal interviews with property owners. In the first few weeks of working at Sama, Anna comes to central office for Intro to Govern training with Charla Triffle. After the basic training, she's paired up with a senior appraiser who provides peer-to-peer training and mentors her along with her regional manager. There's residential and ag training with people from TSMP, and then intermediate and advanced Govern training once she's comfortable with the basics. After the first year or so, she's let loose to inspect properties on her own. And then there's commercial property training with TSMP as well. The training doesn't stop there. If there's one thing about being an appraiser, it's that you've got to love learning because it never ever stops. There's always classes to take, designations to achieve, and continuing professional development credits to keep track of. Human Resources plays a huge role in continuous development. Murray Mazzaros is the agency's organizational development manager. Not only did he do Anna's orientation, but he also assists her in getting enrolled at UBC to get her certificate for property assessment. Once that's done, she can get her license, and then there's senior designations to strive for, and don't forget all those hours of continuing professional development that are required. Anna continues her employment journey at Sama and learns about the 3 main services that we provide. Todd said 4. There's annual maintenance to keep our physical inventory current and to update data and values on specific properties. And those are usually changes submitted by one of you, an administrator. There's reinspection. That's when either an entire municipality or a specific group of properties is reviewed at the same time to bring data up to date. And there's revaluation. Revaluation is done every 4 years, and it updates the values of the entire province to a more current base date. This is done by creating mathematical models from sales verification and income and expense information for some commercial properties. This is the math nerd's time to shine. Anna also learns a little bit about Sama's industrial unit. They assess things that are likely big, dirty, smelly, or dangerous. Oh, TSNP. I don't know where Sean went. There he is. You confused me so much trying to figure out this presentation. Where do you fit in? Does anybody besides you know what you do? And why are there so many big words to describe you? Technical Standards and Policy finds it impossible to use plain language, and their favorite word might be governance. The other truth is that this is another division that is involved in nearly everything. That's why it's so hard to pinpoint exactly where they would be in an appraiser's journey. If we're keeping with our new employee, Anna, she's already met a few of the TSMP folks when receiving her training. Although Charlotte from HR does the govern or data entry training, it's the people in TSMP that teach her the rules, regulations, and best practices for her to be able to do property assessment. They're in charge of facilitating her residential property training, and then she took a short course about agricultural land from the ag experts. And now that she's been around for a while, she's taken commercial property training as well. The entire division is overseen by Sean Cooney. He's got a very large, with a capital L title, Chief Assessment Governance Officer. I bet you can't say that 3 times fast. I told you that they really like the word governance. Oh, and then there's Andrew Workman as well. He's mainly in charge of the publication side of things. These coordinators and research officers are responsible for researching best practices in the assessment world and writing and maintaining the manual with a capital M. Andrew made sure that I said it had a capital M. The cost guide and the handbook that the entire province uses, including the 4 cities that SAMA doesn't assess, as well as any jurisdictions that may opt out of our assessment services in the future. They provide training for our staff, as I've said, but they train external appraisers as well. They oversee multiple advisory committees, and they are the liaison between SAMA and the other assessment providers, as well as SAMA and the provincial government. They're the agency's quality control when it comes to building the models I mentioned, but they also test and recommend new applications and technology as well. I wasn't kidding when I said they have a wide range of things they look after and provide. They assist with appeals and coordinate legal resources for them. They provide progress updates to the board and the government regarding revaluation. They manage third-party assessment agreements, and they send weekly change of ownership data to municipalities. Maybe Anna will apply for the research officer position. She wonders if she's detail-oriented enough to go through and update all that information every 4 years. All right, so once Anna has completed the maintenance work in her municipalities, she sends the updated information to them, and the municipality can open their roll. Every property owner has the right to appeal their assessment on an annual basis. And a quick breakdown of that process is this. The appeals may be resolved by an agreement to adjust, where all parties involved agree on a correction to the property, or the appeal might be heard by the Board of Revision. At a board hearing, SAMA, or our girl Anna, is required to explain how the property value was determined. The board hears evidence from both sides and determines whether an error was made or not. If either side doesn't agree with the board's decision, the appeal can be escalated to the Saskatchewan Municipal Board. And at this stage, it's the appellant's responsibility to show how the Board of Revision has made an error in their earlier decision. Or it might go all the way to the top and be heard by the Provincial Court of Appeal. These are usually the high stakes or high value appeals. Anna has received notice of an appeal in one of the jurisdictions she handles. Good thing she's had this supportive value training by the Appeal Support Committee. This committee is chaired by Kevin Grote, and training is provided by members from both TSMP and ASD. They provide level 1 training to all second-year appraisers, and there are 2 additional levels that are available for appraisers that will be handling more complex properties and appeals. The Appeal Support Committee provides tracking, oversight, and support for high-value, high-risk appeals. Depending on the complexity of the appeal, appraisers, senior market commercial appraisers, coordinators, and legal counsel can all be involved. Like I mentioned earlier, TSMP provides support and oversees the legal resources for the Court of Appeal. This brings us to quality assurance. Quad is another division who is a mystery to a lot of us. They're like the cloud, and nobody knows what happens in the cloud. I have heard them lovingly referred to as bean counters, though, if that helps. Quad consists of 5 people. Carlo is the managing director, and he reports directly to SAMA's board. This is because Quad is independent from the rest of SAMA. Much like the TSMP publications are used by the entire province, jurisdictions that don't use our assessment services are still required by law to have their role confirmed by Quad. An easy and simple way to look at it is that there's 2 parts to what SAMA does. There's the assessment services side, and then there's the governance or legislated side. Even if SAMA didn't provide any sort of assessment services, the governance side would still be required to create and maintain the provincial publications and to audit and confirm all the assessment rules for all municipalities. At the most basic, Quad audits all municipalities' rules to make sure that they are following the requirements outlined in the legislation. Once confirmation and primary audits have been completed and passed, the rule can be confirmed by the board of directors, who pass motions to confirm the rules at their regular monthly meetings. This part is important because if the rule doesn't pass the audit, the municipality cannot enforce taxation. Something else Quad does for SAMA jurisdictions only is to balance the rule to govern. So if we use Anna's RM as an example, she's given the assessment information to the RM has opened their assessment roll and kept it open for the required number of days to allow for appeals. Once the roll is closed and the appeals are dealt with, the RM administrator sends Quad an assessment return, now going to be online, and includes all properties and assessed values. SAMA's roll examiners then audit that return and make sure the municipality followed all the requirements. After the audits are complete, the roll is confirmed by the board, and if there are changes to make and govern to make our values match what the municipality has, the changes are made and governed by an admin assistant in central office. Someone from Assessment Services in central office also checks a provincial publication every week called the Gazette to see which rules have opened and then puts that information into govern as well. This in turn updates SAMAView with the most current assessment data. Revaluation, where math nerds unite. Plus me, who can't do math if my life depended on it. Listening to them discuss the models is something that will never stop being completely bewildering to me. A quick rundown on revaluation is that it's a legislated requirement to update all assessments in the province every 4 years. I've already mentioned the mathematical models, and these 4 staff members in our revaluation department oversee all the moving parts to get those models created. There are market specialists, as well as a team of appraisers from every region. They spend countless hours verifying data and analyzing market trends and shifts before the final numbers can be presented to the municipalities and then to the provincial government. Our revaluation department is part of the Assessment Services Business Support Group and is managed by Kevin Grote. Our group includes 2 policy and process analysts, as well as SAMA's appeals coordinator. The policy and process analysts work tirelessly testing new reports, applications, and programs that will improve the efficiency of the processes that we use, and they also handle a multitude of help desk tickets for ASD users who run into problems. Our appeal coordinator delivers the supportive value training I mentioned earlier, as well as helps coordinate internal and external resources for high-value appeals. He also serves as a resource for staff who may require help with any appeal in their jurisdiction. So I've kind of lost the plot when it comes to our fictional employee, so we'll get back to her. Anna has had a wonderful career with SAMA. She started as an assessment appraiser, became a market specialist in her region, did a stint as a research officer in TSMP, tried out a coordinator's role in the reval department for a couple of revaluation cycles, and has ended her career back in the region as a regional manager. I'm not sure which one she replaced, but in our made-up world, there was a vacancy, I promise. She's retiring after a very successful career and many friends made along the way. The 3 departments involved when she started are also involved in her retirement. HR notifies PEP, may conduct an exit interview, handles her continuation of benefits, and announces her retirement to the rest of the agency. IS removes her user access to all SAMA systems, and Finance prepares and sends her record of employment to the government and calculates her final pay. All right, so I hope that this presentation today has shown you a little bit about the different divisions and departments at SAMA and how we all work together towards one main goal. I know that I personally learned quite a few things, and I've worked for SAMA for over 15 years. Thank you to everyone who helped me put this together, Green, Peter, and especially all of the people that patiently answered my questions when I tried to figure out how to sum up an entire department in 3 sentences or less. All right, thank you. Ooh, I pushed the button, maybe I shouldn't have. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. When she talked about employment, it reminded me of a story, and this happened in an airport in the United States. An older fellow, Bob, was sitting there, and this young fellow come and sat down beside him. And Bob looked over, and he noticed the guy was quite pale and sweating and looked nervous. And he said, "So you're afraid of flying?" He said, "No, it doesn't bother me." He said, "So what's the problem?" He said, "Well, I've been transferred." And he said, I got to move my family to Chicago. And he said, "There's a high crime rate. There's gangs, there's riots, there's drugs, there's shootings, and I'm scared." Bob said, "Don't give it a second thought." He said, "I've worked in Chicago for 20 years of my life. It's not a problem." He said, "You go there, buy a decent house, get your kids in a reasonably good private school, go to work, mind your own business, you're not going to have any problems." So they visited for a while, and the guy was getting more reassured, and he said, "Well, thank you, Bob, I appreciate that." He said, "So what do you do for a living?" "Oh," he said, "I'm a tail gunner on a Budweiser truck." That doesn't imply that working at in the reval unit's like being a tail gunner in a beer truck. But anyways, well, at this time I'll bring up the people from our other assessment jurisdictions. I'll have Vanessa come up, and Kalinda, and Kevin, and Julianne. Also, Todd's here too. We'll have Todd Tresslin here if there's questions for Sama. Vanessa, I'll have you come up first. Vanessa Vaughn from Prince Albert. Good. Okay. Oh, don't worry.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vanessa Vaughn, the City Assessor for the City of Prince Albert. I have been the City Assessor with the City of Prince Albert since January of 2019 now. So it's been a few years, but I've been with the City of Prince Albert since late August of 2017. So in our department, we do our assessment valuation in-house. There's myself, and I have 5 appraisers. I currently have only 1 licensed appraiser, and his main work is our commercial assessments. And I have 4 other appraisers that are currently taking their education. One is expected to be licensed yet this year, and another one next year, with the last 2 in the following year or 2. So hopefully in a couple years we'll be all fully licensed. We look after an assessment roll of about $3,820,000,000. So we have about 13,081 properties that we look after assessment for. And this slide provides the breakdown of all the different property types. This includes all taxable, exempt, and grant in lieu properties. So for 2024, we completed all of our annual permit work in about December, early January, and we opened our assessment roll February 1 of 2024, and our roll closed March 1 of 2024. We have intentions of doing 2 supplementary deliveries, one around July 10th and our final one on October 2nd. From the time frame that our assessment roll was open, we ended up with 85 appeals. This is a difference in 2023. We had 72, so this is an increase from last year. In 2022, we had 31, and in our reval year 2021, we had 53. So this is the highest amount of appeals we've had in our 4-year cycle, and it is in large due to a Saskatchewan Municipal Board decision we got in early 2023 from a 2022 appeal that resulted in us redoing our commercial models. Other work we do for our 2024 plans is to continue doing reinspection work. We have approximately 798 sales to get verified, and that's of commercial, residential, and a few multi-residential sales. We also want to do an area of our commercial population, which would be about 61 properties. And we plan on doing a couple neighborhoods for our residential, which would mount to approximately 1,380 properties. With the revaluation for 2025, we delivered our preliminary values to the Ministry of Government Relations. We delivered our commercial values to the ministry based on the cost approach to valuation. We are working on our analysis currently to try and see about moving our commercial valuations to the income approach. And then that approach will be reviewed versus the cost approach to see which is our best option for delivering values. We have to still redo our residential model, as at the time that we developed it for our preliminary values, we were still in the process of reviewing some of our residential sales. So that review is now all done, and here in the month of April, we will look at redoing our residential model and getting that completed. We sit down as a group and we go through and we thoroughly vet our models, making sure our I's are dotted, our T's are crossed, and eliminate any issues that we see coming up, less for the tax agents to appeal and attack in our modeling. So all of our assessments as they stand in the preliminary values are still subject to change. At a high level of our preliminary values, this does include our taxable, exempt, and grant in lieu properties. So as I said, they are subject to change. We are seeing increases overall for our residential, our multifamily, and our commercial. On the agricultural side and railway, we don't have a large amount of properties of those types in Prince Albert, so they're not even really showing on the graph. So planning for the future of the assessment department in Prince Albert and where to go with the revaluation coming up, we try to really do a lot of hands-on training and a lot of inclusion of the staff in all of the discussions that we have. So all of our newer staff all start with training on residential, and they're all now going to be moving into other areas of assessment. So this will allow for flexibility of work assignment. So my one commercial appraiser isn't the only one doing commercial assessment going forward. And this will also improve our customer service to the property owners, that when they call, they can pretty much in the end talk to any one of our appraisers and get the same answer and the same response. So more timely communication. We follow up as appeals is a very complicated and cumbersome process in the assessment world and a very time-consuming process. We follow up and we have discussions regarding all of our appeals, whether we win or lose them, and we talk about what went right, what went wrong, and what we need to do better going forward. So everybody has a good understanding in our department of what the issues were. And from those conversations as well, we do annual reporting to our city council on assessment issues that do come up in our world and can cause some taxation revenue risk. We are constantly looking at ways to better improve our communication. So we're always looking for what is the right message, to focus on what the right message is, and making sure we're communicating out and educating the property owners. And we like to work together with our city council and provide them communication plans before they go out, because our city council are the ones that sometimes hear from property owners prior to us, so they may have valuable information and feedback that they can give to us as well. And there's lots of different forms of method of communication that we're looking at. Outside of assessment, even though we have permit work coming up, these are some important things that are coming up in our municipality. We have construction that has started on the $898 million Victoria Hospital expansion. Ground has been moving. They've been moving the parking lot and everything so that they can move staff parking and start construction with the services that need to move and everything before they can start building the actual hospital. We have the Yard subdivision that is bringing multiple types of properties into our city. Right now we have one hotel that has been built, and we have a strip mall that is in this picture that is constructed. We have another hotel that is coming. We have 2 car dealerships that are coming. We have a Canadian brew house with a rooftop terrace that is coming into our city, a gas station with a car wash. The Athabasca Dene Education Authority Administrative Building is being built there, a grocery store, a liquor store, and we're going to have an urban RV park with 42 paved sites that are going to be around a pond area, which is going to be nice to be close to our rinks and our aquatic center for those people that want to bring their kids to hockey camps and everything. They can camp instead of staying in a hotel. So there won't be no lack of accommodations for people. This is a very recent picture of our new facility. So this is the city's new aquatic center and arenas. There's an 8-lane swimming pool, a 22-meter competitive pool, spring diving boards. There's 200-seat capacity seating, so it gives us the ability to have competitions in the swimming world. Combined leisure splash and wave pool. There's a lazy river, 2 water slides, and a whirlpool. On the arena side, we have 2 twin-size arenas that amount to 77,159 square feet, and they're both 2 NHL-size rinks. So they allow for the south rink gives the ability to seat 264 seats, and there's wheelchair capacity as well, and the north rink is 510 seats. So this is going to be a big game changer in our hockey tournament world and with hockey in Prince Albert. The Little Red. If you've ever been to Prince Albert and you haven't seen Little Red, this is our gem. I invite you all when you come through to come and see our park. It's 4 acres of playground. Recently, in this past year, we've added in this playground with zip lines, picnic areas. There's 3 brand new warm-up shelters. There's 3 new bridges. There's paved pathways. They've doubled the parking space. We made upgrades to the roadways in the park. And we have a one-of-a-kind year-round, fully accessible, fully contained washroom system that is going to be added into here. And they've done an expansion to the kitchen camp area with fire pit seating and a pizza oven. It really is a true gem. And we have a little restaurant out there that is also licensed that is a great place to go and eat. So it's a nice place for a family to spend a day, an afternoon, a beautiful early evening. So come by and see our little gem. The one picture in the bottom left-hand corner is a more close-up picture of the playground that was built there. Oh. So some of the challenges we are facing in Prince Albert is definitely the assessment appeals. They're a lengthy process that takes a lot of our staff resources. So while our staff resources are spending time doing assessment appeals, we're not out doing the inspections and finding those extra tax dollars to add to the assessment roll. They're becoming a lot more complicated, and with that complicatedness is bringing our legal costs to increase and involving legal counsel in a lot more of the issues. Another challenge is making sure that we come up with the best communication plan for the 2025 reval to provide the best educational content and awareness to the property owners that when your roll is open for 60 days in the reval year, please ensure to look at your assessment notice when you get it in the mail. And that's our new hotel in the yard. If there's any questions. They will be currently at the Art Hauser. There is a new eventplex that is in the planning process right now, which when that eventually gets built, that's where they would be playing out of. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. That was a interesting assessment update and a little bit of tourism in there too, so thank you. For those of you that are online, the question was, are the Raiders playing in the new facility? And the answer is not yet, right? Yeah, okay. I'll now call on Kalinda Johnson from the City of Regina to give their assessment update.
Good afternoon, everyone. As John said, my name is Kalinda Johnson. I'm the new city assessor. I took over the position in November of last year, following the retirement of our former city assessor, Steve Ward. Just a couple highlights from us. What's new in Regina? There's a new facility set to break ground soon on the existing Sportplex site of the Lawson, right across from the stadium. This is our new indoor aquatic center. The project has an estimated cost of $189 million and was made possible by securing a total of $128 million in federal funding through the Investing in Canada program. The Housing Accelerator Fund. In February, the City of Regina signed an agreement with the federal government for over $35 million in the Housing Accelerator funding to fast-track over 1,000 homes in the next 3 years to be built in our city. This work will help spur the construction of more than 3,000 homes over the next decade. We've had some changes to our zoning bylaws this year. In January of this year, City of Regina Council approved amendments to the zoning bylaw, taking a major step towards more housing availability across the city. The zoning changes allow for 4 units per residential lot, promoting more medium density, duplexes, multifamily homes such as townhouses and multiplexes, allowing for greater density along urban corridors and increasing height limits for buildings. This ensures different kinds of homes can be built in established single-family neighborhoods as they exist. These amendments are set to support the new housing development applications in the spring of 2024, and the zoning amendments approved by Council are the first phase to work to update planning policies and zoning regulations and remove barriers to housing development in our city. What's new in assessment and property assessment? We have a current staffing complement of 21 staff. We're a relatively small branch for the city. It consists of myself, 2 managers, 3 coordinators, 3 seniors, a data scientist, 7 appraisers, and 2 support staff right now. We currently have 2 vacancies on our roll. Positions are tough to fill. I'm sure you've heard from all of the assessment jurisdictions. It's tough to find accredited appraisers, and it's even tougher to have them at the senior levels at this point. I'll provide you an update on the assessment appeals. As Vanessa mentioned, they tend to use a lot of resources, and we are currently supporting value on 5 years of property assessment appeals in the City of Regina. I'll also provide you an update on the 2025 preliminary numbers that we have and were delivered to government relations at the beginning of this month. So current look at our roll. Our roll opened on January 5th and closed February 5th. We currently have 192 appeals filed. We have 9 agreements to adjust and 5 withdrawals. So we have 184 properties that have to go to board this year for hearings. Decisions have to be rendered prior to July 5th, unless we have an extension through government relations. Currently, we only have 4 hearings set to date. A large number of our appeals this year are the industrial appeals. Look at the Sask Municipal Board and where we stand. So we currently have 3 years of hearings before the Saskatchewan Municipal Board. 2023 has 42 appeals, including 16 hotels that have been cross-appealed by both the City of Regina and the appellant. These are high-value properties. We're in the neighborhood of about $400,000 loss on a municipal tax base with these appeals. These are scheduled to be heard in September of this year. The other appeals are all commercial appeals, and they have been slated to be heard in May. 2021, we have 16 properties on hold. So when a property gets put on hold at the SMB, they're usually waiting for a decision from the courts in years prior to apply. That's the case with us. So for 2021, we have land appeals on hold at 2021 SMB. They were waiting on a 2020 decision from the Court of Appeal on land. What's happened is that the court has remitted it back to the SMB. So we're in limbo again. We're on hold for that. What typical practice was to go from Board of Revision to SMB up to the Court of Appeal has now resulted in coming back down the chain from Court of Appeal back to SMB. So it's very trying, it's very costly, and it's very cumbersome, and a lot of resources are used to support these appeals. Just a touch on the Court of Appeal. We have 5 Court of Appeal cases that have impacted us this year alone, but just I'll touch on a few of them. 2019 Southland Mall, this is from the last cycle. This appeal has again gone up to all 3 levels, back down to the SMB, was heard in a trial de novo, decision rendered, and then now back up to the courts based on that decision. So 5 years later, 5 levels later, we're still at the Court of Appeal on this one. It's interesting that as much as we start at a ground level and we start with a specific ground of appeal, by the time we get back to the 5th hearing, the grounds have completely changed. So it's a trying case. This one's going back to the courts on the basis of single fee appraisal, looking to be able to develop a model on one property. 2019 Boardwalk appeal was also a 2019 decision, again back up to the courts, back down to the SMB. We won this hearing. They have not appealed it to the Court of Appeal, so that's great for us. This appeal was largely focused on disclosure as to what the assessor would provide for information. We provided the appellant everything on this appeal, everything that was required, everything that was requested, and we were able to successfully defend it. So it's a great decision for us. Happy that it's not going back to another level. The 2020 appeals, I just talked about those. Those are the ones that we're on limbo in 2021 for. The case that's on the screen is a care home decision that was heard in 2020, and we've yet to have a decision on. So it's not typical that we wait over a year for a decision, but this one still seems to be on hold, so it's hopefully done and not remitted back down, but it's still a decision on hold impacting us from last cycle. The last 2 haven't been heard, Concord and Canada Life office towers and retail strip malls in the city of Regina. There's 93 properties in total. We're expecting to have court hearing dates set sometime here in May. So I'm guessing likely at the end of June, we will just get into our first year of this cycle when we enter a new reval. So the length of the appeals are definitely weighing on us. 2025 reval, this is really a high look level like our revaluation numbers that were provided to GRA earlier this month. First glance, they look really good. They look pretty consistent in that they'll go overall. The big thing to point out is that we have such a huge swing in our residential market. We have 65,000 properties within 6 market areas, and we have a range from a reduction of 24% in one market area to an increase in 15+% in another. So it's a 40% swing across our city. Condominiums, we have 13,630 properties, very similar. The horizontal market, which is similar to like a single family home, they're the ones that are seeing the increase, while all the other styles are kind of staying the same or seeing slight decreases. So what we found in our city is that anything that's kind of a single family, even in a condo model, is seeing an increase across our city. Multi-residential, we're seeing a slight decrease. Again, the numbers kind of are a little bit deceiving. We are seeing about 587 of those properties are seeing a decrease of 8 to 9%, and the rest are going up. So it's a little bit skewed, but it's the overall effect of our multi-residential is a 1% adjustment. Commercial industrial, again, we've combined those 2 numbers, showing a slight decrease. What we're seeing is that our commercial is coming down about 6%, and then our industrial is coming up a little bit to offset that. So Overall, in the city of Regina, we're looking about a 2.7% increase in assessed value due to revaluation. Just to wrap up our priorities, of course, our revaluation, the next few months will be spent tweaking and testing our models. Our goal is to have preliminary values ready for September. A report's going to council to set direction for tax policy this spring, and final values will be released in January of 2025 after percentages of values are set by the province, of course. In the past, we've issued letters, estimate letters out to our ratepayers. So we send about 80,000 letters out. That's not happening this year. So we'll be taking a different tactic in promoting our homeowners and property owners to go over the website to find the information. Other priorities are succession planning. We have currently about 40% of our team is new. They have not gone through a revaluation year, so it's quite a new experience for us. We're working to build from within to continue to support our succession planning. And our other priority is the CAMA modernization. So our computer-aided mass appraisal system is quite old. It's having an internal upgrade right now. We've faced a number of difficulties with resourcing, finding the people to support and rebuild our system, and system issues themselves. Currently, we're working in both an Oracle and .NET system, and we're continuing to move to the .NET system, so it's a more modern system. The new system will focus on user-friendly interface, improving efficiencies in navigation and data entry. We'll also be adding customized reports and workflows. And those customized reports we allow, much like SAMA, to have our clients reach them online. So, questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Kalinda. I'll call on Kevin Tooley from the City of Saskatoon. Kevin.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody, and to those of you in the room, welcome. Those of you at home, I got to say I'm a little bit envious that you guys are probably sitting there in your sweatpants on your couches, but it's good to be here this afternoon. And as John mentioned, my name's Kevin Tooley, and I'm an assessment manager with the City of Saskatoon. You'll notice a little different title than my colleagues on stage. Our city assessor, Bryce True, he's actually away this week. He's at the Alberta Assessment Appraiser Conference. He's actually the president of the Saskatchewan Assessment Appraisers Association, and so he's there just taking their conference this week. Also, some of you in the room may also recognize me. I wear a couple different hats in life. I also am I'm the deputy mayor with the city of Warman. So typically I'm actually at this meeting anyway, but I'm usually here as a voting delegate. So later on in the day when you see me holding up a red card, don't get too upset with me, because I am here in that capacity as well. And I also sit on the Urban Advisory Committee as an appointee from SUMA. Now, as far as our update goes, I'm going to figure out what I need to do with the clicker. I got to just go side forward. There we go. So as far as our office goes and our staffing, we just recently had a change to our office protocol and our office policies, and we actually have closed our office to the public. If anybody's familiar with our office and our setup and where we are in proportion to City Hall, we're actually located about a block away from where City Hall is. And so we're a little bit of sort of that off the beaten path as far as City Hall goes. So decision was made to actually close our office to the general public, a little bit just around some of the safety things that we've been seeing just in some other jurisdictions. And so we've set it up now that whenever we do have the public looking to come in to have a meeting with us or to come talk with us, we have a space over at City Hall now where we'll go over, we'll make arrangements to have somebody sent over and meet with them to hear their concerns, comments, or questions. So that's something that we're just starting as of April 1st. It's been running fairly well so far. That being said, I don't know if we've really had anybody asking to meet with us at this point, because as everybody can imagine, we're not always the most commonly sought after area of City Hall. The other thing that's happened with our office is our admin function has also moved over to City Hall, and that's just where we fit in with the corporate structure in Saskatoon. We actually fall underneath the revenue division, and so then we're just a little bit of a side facet of that. So we've kind of amalgamated some of our admin functions, answering phone calls, getting the mail collection, that kind of thing. And so those staff are going to be working out of City Hall. Now, of our staff, we've got 30 professional staff that work in the assessment office. Of those, 14 of us are licensed assessment appraisers, so with the Saskatchewan Assessment Appraisers Association. Then we also have 6 who have advanced designations with either the IAAO or the AIC, and I'm throwing out acronyms like everybody knows what those are, but the IAAO is the International Association of Assessment Officers, of which I'm actually not a member of that organization, but I am a member of the Appraisal Institute of Canada. And so in addition to the 6 that do have the advanced designations, we actually have another 6 that are in the process of pursuing one of the designations in either one of those 2 organizations. Also, you'll see in 2024, we did have an additional FTE that was approved in the 2024 budget in Saskatoon, just to kind of goes along with the increase in the number of properties in Saskatoon, but also just the increases that we're seeing, like you've heard from the other jurisdictions, things like assessment appeals. And I'll get to some of those a little bit further on in the slides here. So as far as Saskatoon goes, and I got to keep up with the slides, population. The population of Saskatoon in 2023, we're estimating it to be 290,750. And so, you know, those of you that have been around Saskatoon, you've seen that the city has grown quite a bit. I know in the time frame that I've been involved in the assessment world, you know, I've seen things like a couple neighborhoods in Saskatoon, Stonebridge, for example. It barely existed when I started in the assessment field. Brighton didn't exist, I think, 5 years ago. Willow Grove, Aspen Ridge. I'm trying to think of some of the other neighborhoods that have been new in Saskatoon. Rosewood. And so there's lots of neighborhoods where there's, you know, tens of thousands of people actually residing in some of those neighborhoods that, you know, if you've been around Saskatoon for 20, 25 years, some of those didn't exist at that time. So the population's grown by 2.2% from July 2021 to July 2022. And as far as our assessment, the number of parcels go in Saskatoon, we're actually over 100,000 parcels with an office budget of $3.3 million. This particular slide, there's not really a whole lot to explain on this one. It's just annual permit volumes, and this is commercial properties. One thing you will see is that we actually are trending a little bit downwards. We've had quite a bit of a boom back in like the years from 2012, 13, 14, and then we've had a little bit of a decrease since that time frame, but we're still seeing a fairly large volume of permits being built and new construction in the city. Next permit is actually our new residential permits, and this includes also multifamily or multi-dwelling permits. And again, we've seen a little bit of a decrease in some of those, but one thing that I will note that is happening in Saskatoon right now is we're seeing a really big resurgence of multifamily, like apartment buildings. And a lot of that is tied back to, there's a lot of incentives right now that are being offered provincially, federally, in that particular sector. And so lots of developers now are actually building in that marketplace, whereas what we saw for a number of years would have been a little bit more around the condominium developments. Our 2024 assessment roll, like I said, number of accounts, we're at 100,400, and this is that's a 2023 number. We don't really have anything officially yet for 2024. Total assessed value, $54.9 billion. And of that, the breakdown of that is 94,300 of single-family and multi-family parcels of properties, and then there's 6,100 commercial parcels. Now, our assessment roll closed on February 5th, 2014. Now, next I move along to the border revision and what we've been seeing there as far as appeals go. And so we've tracked it back to 2009, just to show sort of what some of the history has been here. I think something that does stand out is you'll notice every 4 years where we have a revaluation year, those are always our heavier appeal loads. So you'll see 2009, 2013, 2017, we're all fairly healthy years. Then you'll see a substantial drop the following year. So for 2021, that was our most recent revaluation year, and we had 758 appeals that year. Now, you'll see the following year, in 2022, we actually jumped up, which is a little bit of an anomaly for our jurisdiction in comparison to some of the others. We do have a very active, when it comes to the assessment appeals, we're very active with property agents in the city, and so we do get a lot of commercial properties that are you know, they're fairly professional representation on the other side. And then, so for 2023, we dipped down to 611. And right now, our roll is closed. So we closed on February 5th. We have 109 based on our preliminary 2024 numbers. Anything that happens from this point, so any amended assessment notices or supplementary assessments throughout the year, that number will increase a little bit. But I don't anticipate we're going to get into that 600 or 700 or 900 number like we have in the last couple of years. And as you've heard from the other jurisdictions, 2025 revaluation is something that is very much on our radar, and lots of the work in our office is currently focused on that. And so our residential model building is complete at this point. Our commercial and multifamily properties, we did some trending on those to get our numbers to government relations. Overall, across the city, we're looking at about a 13% increase in property values. Keep in mind, there's going to be some that are going up above that. There's going to be some that are going to be below that. In our commercial sector, it's looking at like about a 16% increase. Residential is looking like 11%. And multifamily's fairly flat at 1%. And so our next steps is going to be some community engagement on reassessment, including phase-in, tax shifting, and just other levels of communication. And something that we do in Saskatoon is we actually will meet with some of the various stakeholders with sector group meetings. And those have actually gone over quite well in the last few years. And like I said, we will meet with things like property managers, some of the tax agents, and some of the appraisal firms, just to kind of get a rough idea of if we're kind of going the right places and the right ways with where we're going with our numbers. Looking ahead, our next steps, we're going to be looking at supportive values. So 2025, there's going to be a lot of effort focused on supportive values. Ongoing role maintenance. We've got finalization of our models and our communication plans, that stakeholder engagement piece. And then our property tax billing for this year is going to be May and due at the end of June. And I don't have a slide saying specifically questions, but if anybody has any questions, I could take any of those now. See none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll call on Julianne Rempel for the Swift Current update.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. See if I can figure this out. She said there's arrows. City of Swift Current, it's the smallest independent jurisdiction. I've been in the assessment profession now for 19 years, and I was blessed to start out with my foundation working for SAMA. And it led to the career that I have now. As of September 1st of last year, I became the city assessor and took over from my predecessor and am now responsible for our inventory. And I'm not sure how many of you are aware in your own jurisdiction of your town or your municipality of how many units that you are surrounded by. In the city of Swift Current, for example, we have over 11,000 parcels that are parceled by land titles, but they're grouped into 7,689 assessment IDs. So meaning they have they're owned by one person and they're a specific property type. So we have 4,936 single-family dwellings. We have 1,189 multi-residential, including those condominium units. We have 616 improved commercial, industrial, recreational, and industrial properties. Out of all of those properties, each jurisdiction has probably noticed that there isn't as much construction as there has been in the past. We've noticed a shift into renovating what is already existing. So our permits have gone down over the past couple of years, But in the last year, we had 76 residential projects from your decks or your garages or sheds, typically. We've only had three new houses built. We have 34 commercial projects, and typically that is a property that has been used for one purpose and moved to another, so it's being reclassified. We have 2 institutional projects totaling a value of construction at $7,695,750. In January, our City Council approved the operating budget, and the review of the budget was to focus on debt reduction for our municipality, being fiscally responsible and focused to the needs of our municipality as it ages, and specifically into our infrastructure upgrades. And so based on focusing on these upgrades to our municipality to make it a thriving community that we can provide for all the individuals that live there, we have proposed a 3.24% increase in property taxes. In Swift Current, being a smaller municipality, I work at City Hall and my door is open. How many people here have actually walked into their SAMA office? Anyone? No? Yay, Terry! When I worked for SAMA, it was very rare that someone actually came in to the office to actually ask me about their assessment, because they could go to their local administrator and speak to the individual responsible. Like the RM of Cooley, you can go into RM 136 and speak to the administrator there, but we didn't often have the actual property owner come to us directly. When I moved to working for the City of Swift Current and being at City Hall, that meant my door was open and any individual could come in and sit down and talk with me, from the property owner, for people who live there wanting to know how it works and why. So in our appeal history, we've been relatively lucky in the past as to how many appeals actually are put in place. Last year we had our highest amount in the last decade of 26 appeals were initiated, and mostly because I'm a department of one. So in order to protect the rights of the property owner, going through the appeal process means that they are heard, that I hear what their concerns are, that they know how their property is valued and why, and therefore eventually leading to what they're really concerned about is the taxes that they pay. So in the last year, there was 8 residential, 5 commercial, 2 industrial, and 11 multi-residential properties. Of those, 20 of them were agreements to adjust, which is speaking to that process of they were able to come in and talk to me, and sometimes a property changes and we don't have a way to know. There wasn't exactly a building permit, so we rely on you, the individual who owns your property, to make sure that we have your data characteristics right so that we can value your property for you. Going forward, right now, as you've heard from everyone, that we're working on revaluation, and that process involves looking at the characteristics of each property, looking at every property that has sold and seeing how the market changed over time. We have these computer systems, which you've heard talked about today, that house all of that data that we work on and allow us to provide to your assessed values. And the City of Swift Current has had the same system dating back to 2003. So like everyone else, we're looking at how can we provide to you using the best systems out there, and integrating like maps like you saw earlier with GIS, so we know where you're located, how your property relates to the ones around it, and how we can assess you. Property sales is a major focus, and you've probably received a sales verification questionnaire in the mail, either from SAMA or your local jurisdiction, and we collect that data from you so we can actually find out what a property actually sold for that land in that building. So in Swift Current, you'll see that there isn't a lot of transactions over time, but in 2023, we had a boom, and I don't know if that's recovery from COVID, that people could move around again, and we were all getting comfortable with being able to do the things that we were used to doing before, but had a break from. We have incentive programs. I don't know if the average property owner knows this, but within your municipality, like I know each city has this, to encourage growth and to encourage construction, we provide you exemptions on
the assessment side. So an exemption is applied to your assessed value, and it gives you a break on that assessed value for a period of time because you've improved a property. We also have property owner engagement. So I'm not sure how many of you in the room have gone to your local municipality's website or your city's website, but on there we're doing our best to provide information that you want to read, and that you know how you open something up and you just see all these words and you're like, So we're working on ways of making it visually eye-catching. We're titling it in ways that you can say, oh, I'm residential, and you see residential and you know that you want to look at that. So we're using Twitter, TikTok even, as my kids told me I need to get into, but I refuse. I don't know if anyone else in the room relates to that, but we have a communications and stakeholder department at the City of Swift Current, and they're incredible when it comes to our social media, and they're getting out there on all options. So the City of Swift Current has a strategic plan that was put in place back in 2022 and is forecasted forward to 2027. We want to advance our community. We want to provide to the individuals that live there. We want to provide economic stability and prosperity with our facilities and the services that we provide. And basically, we want to just make sure that our community is one that the individuals who are there want to live in and stay in and are provided for. Any questions? Or anyone have a question about how they could appeal their property, or if they even would, or what has held you up, or information that you wanted to learn today that maybe we didn't provide? We're happy to provide. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Julianne. No questions for any of our service providers or Todd up here? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank the four of you, the city assessors that are here. I know our executive, Sean mentioned it earlier, the city assessors meetings, our advisory meetings, they always show up and help us out there. We have the city meeting advisory and commercial together, so we've got a good working relationship with the city assessors, and we certainly do appreciate all four of you. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to call on Andrew Workman to come up. We're going to go into the trends for the reval in 2025.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad we could all come together today. That picture you saw of me, poor Peter, our communications, he phoned me last year and he said, do you want to get a new photo? And I said, never. I will never lose the mustache photo. I'm so happy with it. So thank you again. I'm sure you've heard it all a lot, but thank you for coming today to hear us talk. Unlike Betty this morning, I will be neither brief nor brilliant. No, I've said that wrong. That's all right. I'm off to a tough start, but I will endeavor to continue. So this is the agenda. It won't take any time at all. I'll go over the major reval milestones, the role of assessment, some trend considerations, some SAMA residential and agricultural trends, the provincial, commercial, and other regulated trends, some maps, and we'll touch back on reval delivery, which we heard Sheldon and Chandra talk about. One other thing, as we get going, my humor does not improve throughout my presentation, so you're just going to have to suck it up. And I tend to talk too fast, and if I'm talking too fast, go get a coffee, because I'm not going to slow down. So, all right. Before we start, I need to share a story with you. We're working on a rather large oil and gas land policy. I don't know, some of you may have heard of it. And I was in Calgary with a bunch of oil representatives trying to do the sell of this policy. And it was a 2-day event, and I got there. And resplendent, I had my shirt and tie and my shoes and my jacket and cufflinks and a tie bar. And I woke up in the morning and I realized I didn't have a belt. Now, the belt in the pantheon of clothes is somewhere between pants and hair gel. It's not the most important thing, but I was walking around there like Alanis Morissette with one hand in my pocket, trying to carry my buffet plate and everything else. So, so it is with trends and policy more broadly speaking. You can think of everything, or you think you thought of everything. And one of the things we talk about is the gift of time. And on that morning, I did not have time to go find a belt. But fortunately, as we go through these trends, we do have time. And so I'll come to that a little bit more at the end, but we're going to release the provincial trends today and then talk about the local and individual trends. So for the major milestones, it's nice that some are already complete. The capital M manual, it's not a manual, Kirsten, it's the manual. And so that is through and done. We have the preliminary market analysis, and that leads into the preliminary values that we've provided April 1st to government relations. In progress, our friends in assessment services and to a lesser extent, technical standards, are on the finalization of those market values. And there's a lot of moving pieces that go into that. It's not as simple as just throwing up a chart and making myself look good. Still to come, of course, well, we have the June 30th delivery to municipalities. So we're going to get those early numbers out for you to have a look. We need the provincial percent of value to come, and ultimately, in 2025, when I feel like I'm 64, we will have the values out to municipalities for the revaluation. So the role of assessment, and what are we looking at? Well, it's a long and winding road. So for property assessment, that's obviously where we come in, and that's what's within the purview of our control. But if we look at tax classes in the education uniform mill rates, well, that's not set by us. And then, of course, we have the local mill rates that go in. And ultimately, that's what ends up as the property taxes that are responsible for each individual property owner. So the takeaway is, we are super important. I am super important. But we are only part one of the process. The rest is up to government and you folks. Now, I love this slide, because this is a really simple calculation of local budget needs with the taxable assessment and the required mill rate. And this used to be on 2 slides, and I pulled it together. And why I like it so much is because you'll notice that after a revaluation, the waistline of taxable assessment has expanded, and I can sympathize with that. But you're thinking to yourself, surely self, if one of those bubbles gets bigger, one must also get smaller. And some clever person has put this together for you graphically so that you can see that if the budget stays the same and the assessment increases, correspondingly, the mill rate will decrease. Now, I don't want to say it's brilliant. It might be brilliant. Okay. This is a really cool slide, and my friends always joke that I'm a tax man. I am not a tax man. If anything, I'm an assessment person. But then I throw up, for the first time ever, Sam is crossing $200 billion of assessment, and they say, oh, you're definitely a tax man. That's the way it goes. But really neat, and a testament to the people at SAMA who do all of that work. $206 billion for the first time, that is a lot of assessment, considering our cost per parcel that was mentioned this morning and everything else that we've talked about. That is a great figure for the agency. So for the trend considerations, keep in mind we're reval to reval. We are talking 2019 to 2023. If your neighbor sold their property yesterday, let it be, it doesn't matter. We're only concerned with January 1 of 2023. That's the base date. We're talking about the trends to get us to there. Now, I do show a little bit later on some movement in that regard or past the base dates, but for right now, that's the key date for us. So, I'm going to hold your hand a little bit and walk through this. The CAMA system, you've had that explained. Everything flows from the CAMA system for the most part for us. All of the numbers go in and the number comes out. To get the trends, we are taking the new values, dividing them by the old values, and that is what the trend is going to be. Now, SAMA does a lot of numbers, and we have billions and millions and hundreds of millions. Here's a really cool piece of information for you. My numbers in this presentation are from government relations. They're the file that we provided to them for the April 1st numbers. We were tracking the work that ASD was doing daily in the lead up to the providing of the file, and thereafter, frankly. And what we could see, at a minimum on a daily, when assessment services is chugging down the tracks, they're doing $8 million a day. That was the number. Sometimes as high as 12, but the minimum was $8 million. Now, I've always maintained that I should get just a small fraction of the assessment change that I'm responsible for. It never happens for me, but at $8 million a day, that would be an all right payoff. Okay, I promise I'm actually coming to trends sooner or later, but I want you to consider 3 levels. We talk about the provincial trend, and yeah, it's important, and it's where we tend to focus. What did the province do? What you may be more interested in is the local. What did my community do? But really, when we get right down to it, you're gonna have to focus on the property. Look for those properties that don't make sense. Drill down, take a look at those. All 3 are important. Certainly your community is important, but we're gonna have the opportunity, the gift of time, to get down to that property level. Whew. All right. So I told you the trends were coming. And before we get right into those, we get by with a little help from our friends. We have wonderful staff back in our office. They make me look good. They allow me to stand up here and say all of these wonderful things. And I personally am very good with change. I found a quote that sums up my entire philosophy for change. And as long as it doesn't change, I'm with it. I will go to the ends of the earth so that other people can change. All right, the residential sales trends. So now we are past the base date. And so that red line you see is the base date. And we've tracked the sales that are going past. Now, it's really difficult to explain a revaluation if the numbers drop after the reval, because you come out with a number, the sales come in and tell you they're lower, and assessors are super popular when that happens. But when they're going up, we look like freaking geniuses, and that is the best spot to be in. Here are some sales for the arable land. I feel like someone stole my thunder numerous times today about the arable trend, but here we are. One of the nice things about this is FCC, Farm Credit Canada, also tracks agricultural land, and they write numerous reports. They're like a paperback writer. It's crazy. They had a 15.7% increase from 23 to 24. Saskatchewan led the nation in ag valuations during that time period. So I don't think anyone's surprised that ag is going up as much as it is. Certainly we're kind of lockstep with FCC. So this is the pasture sales, and I don't want to say we panicked and ran around, because right after the base date there was a drop, but it seems to have recovered, and there is seasonal variability that tends to be in the pasture sales, so not wholly surprising. How's everybody doing? I'm about halfway cafe. We're like Davidson. We're all okay? Okay. I have a confession to make for all of you. I'm doing okay for time. I'm probably going too fast, but that's okay. Just a quick show of hands. I have been sliding beetles titles of songs into the presentation all the way through. People catching those? All right, good news, good news. Well, wow, I feel called out. I don't know. But okay, now everybody's in on it. Let's see how many you can get in the back half of the presentation. And interestingly, for the winner, Kirsten will give you a crisp high five. Because this actually all started because I read the agenda and it was day in the life of an appraiser, and I was like, oh, what a wonderful segue. See all the stuff we bring to the table for you. It's been great. Okay, so the 8 tax classes. Now we're talking with the assessment service providers in our totals. They were kind enough to come and speak with us today, and we harassed them, kicked down their doors, and got their numbers. So these are now the rolled out totals, and you can see that overall, on that high level provincial view, we're talking a 1.18 increase. And so these are actually relatively nice trends. We're not seeing a doubling or a 2.5 increase. You don't want a roller coaster. You don't want a ticket to ride that one. That's good, right? Okay, so you want those trends nice and even. You don't want to see these massive shifts, and you don't want to see one dropping precipitously while others go up. Unlike my property value in the city of Regina, evidently, Glinda, that's tough. So, and now the keen among you are saying, Andrew, commercial is a huge and massive portfolio. I don't know that has enough detail. Well, have I got a gift for you? So here we've pulled out oil and gas and mining. You can see that there's a corresponding drop in the commercial trend because those ones are higher, and then when you take that component out, then your commercial component is going to drop. But the provincial total, the 1.18 at the end, has not changed, and that just makes sense. This one also has pipeline and railway, which has been split out. So that's interesting, and all you need is love and a good set of data. I used let it be in the last set. I couldn't use it twice. So here's where we get back to 2021, that revaluation. This is a comparison. And so, for instance, the arable, the ag arable and non-arable pasture, we can see that those trends have been consistently moving up, and we've seen that for a number of revals. As I said, I don't think it's any secret that agricultural values have been continuing to increase as the years have gone by. And again, we see that that's backed up by the FCC data. Okay, I love this slide mostly because I had no idea we had this many categories. But this is SAM only, and it's residential, and it's kind of showing now a refined breakdown of those residential depending on the type of community you're in. So across the universe of data points that we have, you can see that, let's focus in on RM moderate because it's actually showing kind of a neutral change. So if you're a moderate RM, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, I mean that from an analysis sense, does that mean your municipality hasn't changed? Probably not, because above and below that one is where everybody sits. We're coming out on the average, so don't take this information and say, mine had no change, only to discover that your residential actually changed by 15% or 10% or whatever the number happens to be in your specific area. All right, we're coming up to some maps. Yeah, I'm still okay. I recently shared this story with some coworkers and some other folks, and if you've heard it, my apologies. Some years ago, my family and I were in Fernie, and my wife wanted to go on a hike to see a waterfall, and I'm generally not a hiker. Shocker. we had the grandkids, we had the kids, so there was 6 of us in total. And she said, don't worry, it's an easy hike. We got out of the car, it started to rain. I said, nope. My beautiful wife said yes, so we ended up on the hike. And it was horrible. It was uphill and downhill and mostly uphill and a lot of uphill. And it rained so hard it got muddy. We only had one stroller. It was slipping. The kids were fighting about who got to go in the stroller. And we got to the waterfall. And I couldn't see it because it was raining so hard. I had to take my glasses off. So I walked for 2 hours uphill to hear a waterfall. And so my point in all of this is maps are different depending on the observer. To the Fit Fernie 4, that was a family trail. To this temple of a man, that was a trudge. And I'm shocked we didn't get divorced. But maps, they're a wonderful tool, but that is all they are. Go into the data, give yourself the gift of time, and make sure you know what you're looking at. And so here's a municipality, and you can see kind of in the middle on the bottom, there's a blue chunk. And so really quickly with GIS and heat maps, we can see those areas. Well, as smart as I think I am, if I can see it, I'm pretty sure you can see it. And so we do have time to look at these things, and we are looking at these things as an agency. We are going through, trying to fix a hole, as it were, and make sure that the data is clean as it gets to you. Please also do the same. This one is also really cool. I love maps that don't show the highways because it's like you can follow the sun and you just follow the communities no matter where they go. Lloydminster, Estevan, although who wants to go to Estevan? I'm allowed to say that because my in-laws live there, so I get a pass on the Estevan. So, but also a really cool and unique tool to see that, hey, here are the trends. Yellow and green is generally good. They're not bouncing all over the place. But as we look, we can see that there's some red in the north part of the province. That's not to say that they're an error. That just means let's have a really good understanding of why the data is showing us that. Let's have a good look at those with our client municipalities and with our ratepayers and people who come into Julie's office, evidently, because no one comes into my office, so it's just her. All right. You have already had a little bit of this talk. How am I doing for time? Oh, we're still early. I could be up here all afternoon. Okay. You've already had a little bit of this talk with Sheldon and Chandra. I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different viewpoint. As I said, the data will tell different people different things. And so we have 8 tax classes. And it's a little bit like an octopus. And so you have the center core, and then you have 8 arms. We're reporting on the core. We're saying, okay, well, here's your municipality. Here's what it looks like. But we're also going to give you each arm. And so it may show you an overall trend in your municipality. The body might be 1, but commercial might be down 20%, and residential might be up 35%. Don't leave yourself an octopus's garden of problems. See, I just used an octopus in an analogy for assessment. I mean, that's solid. Thank you, thank you. However, it is true. So here's an example of a municipality, and it's just an example. These aren't actual numbers. You can see that we have some drops, but we also have a large increase into one sector. Examine each one. Take a look at them. So this is the full value. We have the taxable value as they mentioned, and we can see the same thing here. Your overall trend might be okay, but other ag is up and residential is down. What does that mean? What does it mean in those properties? So it won't be long until you want to drill down into that property level and see what we're talking about. And we have conveniently provided you with a way to do so. So take all of that information, Give yourself the gift of time. When we're talking in some municipalities, millions of dollars of assessment in a large industrial facility, or there's a neighborhood that changes dramatically differently to other ones, we can have those conversations. It's not the stuff that we know about that causes problems. It's the stuff we don't know about. It's the stuff you don't see. It's those rocks under the water that tend to sink your boat. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability. Other than, did anybody get all 10 Beatles references? Well, I was kind of giving them away, but. Well, if there's no questions for me, have a great afternoon, and maybe we'll get out of here early.
Thank you, Andrew. I haven't met your wife yet, but when I do, I'm going to ask her about the Workman waterfall adventure and get her version of it. So it sounded interesting. At this time, I'd like to bring our board of directors up here, and we'll have a question and answer session with our board. While they're coming up here, I should mention just a week or so ago, I have a 9-year-old grandson involved in minor hockey. So we had a wrap-up in Maple Creek the other day, and I was reminded of a story. Dave Broadfoot was a Canadian comedian, and he used to play a character of Big Bobby Clobber. And Big Bobby Clobber was a hockey player, and one of the skits, Big Bobby's being interviewed between periods, and he's all taped up, his eyes swelling shut, and the reporter says, "Well, Big Bobby, you're really having a tough game out there." And he said, "Yeah, we're having trouble keeping it out of our end, but, next period we'll do a lot better." And he said, "But Big Bobby," he said, "you're getting killed out there. Like, this is bad." He said, "Yeah, well, those girls are a lot older than us." Okay, have we got everybody? Okay. Have you got any questions you want to bring up? I think we had something on Slido, did we not? Asking about legal representation within. Is it up there? I'll call on Myron. Do you want to answer this? It's, has SAMA considered hiring their own lawyer in order to save on legal fees and costs?
Yeah, good question. And that's something that we've looked at several times, and we continue to look at all the time. If it would be in our best interest to actually have an in-house lawyer, working with our legal system. Just to give you a little history on that, back in 2010, I believe it was, when we made some major adjustments to the staffing levels at SAMA, we did have an in-house lawyer, and we ended up, because of budget constraints, we basically had to let that position go. Since then, we've looked at it at different times to see if it would, and especially when our legal costs started getting so high that, we looked at that and said, well, does it make sense for us to have an in-house representative again? But the short part of it is that when you look at it, when you start drilling down and seeing, does it pay or not, the big thing that comes up is that it's, you end up having to go outside for, outside lawyers, because as Sean mentioned earlier, these new appeals are getting so complex that you need expertise in different, and not even one lawyer is going to be able to do all this. You have to go to different lawyers for different appeals because they're so complex that, each lawyer might specialize in that. So when you look at that, and you weigh out how much work you're still going to have to get done out of house, it really doesn't pay to have your own in-house lawyer. And just to give you an example, the city of, I talked with the former assessor for the city of Edmonton, and they have about the same budget we do, about $22 million a year budget, and they had 5 full-time lawyers in their department. But yet they still did the majority. When it came to the complex appeals, the majority of their work went to out of house. So that just gives you an idea. You could have even 5 lawyers at SAMA, and we'd still have to spend a lot of money going out. So that's why I don't think it's a bad idea to keep looking at that and to see if there is a time when it maybe it works, but right now that's why we've kind of held the line on that.
Also, that we have to give the lawyer support too.
Okay. Any other questions? Is this it down here? Okay. Quality Assurance Division presenters have said they're independent of SAMA, but they are paid and employed by SAMA. Confusing. Should they truly be independent? Do you want to? I was part. Actually, I can tell you part of that one because it was deliberate because Quality Assurance actually monitors what SAMA does and what the other service providers do. And at one time, it was suggested we put Quality Assurance in an entirely separate building, but it wasn't cost effective to do that. So Quality Assurance answers directly to the Board of Directors. Every meeting, Carlo comes in and reports in camera to the Board of Directors. So you want to keep that level of separation there, and because he also watches what the City of Regina, Saskatoon, and the other service providers do also. You want to add to that, Myron?
Yeah, the only part I would say, about the part about whether it's right that SAMA pays for it, well, it is in a sense when you look at Quality Assurance is doing work for the province and for the municipalities. So basically everybody putting money into that pot, and then the money comes out of that pot to pay for that portion of the operation.
Any other on Slido? Okay. Anybody want to ask a question at the mic for any of the board? Yep. Just give us your name and what organization you're with.
Not sure if it's on. Yeah, it's on. I guess I know that. Sorry, it's too short. I know SAMA has their procedure in regards to communicating when there's an appeal. But when I get an appeal and they don't agree to a statement of adjust, and then I get 68 pages of information, and then I get appendice of another 57 pages. It seems like you guys are throwing paper at the appellant because you just want them to go away. And then when he appealed it to the municipal board, there was another 162 pages, I think, or 152 pages more of information that was sent out. And it seems that and we're only talking 200,000 of assessment or 300,000 of assessment. So to me, when he saw all that paper, he didn't know what to do. And I've been around for a long time, and the more the appeals are being rebutted by you or by SAMA, the longer they're getting in their rebuttal. And I would like a lot of that information to be cut out or put as a footnote.
Okay, Todd or Sean, do you want to address this, or, okay? I'll bring Todd up here from Assessment Service.
Hi, thank you. That's a very good question. I guess it relates to our appeal submissions. And it's a good comment. It's a fair comment. And what it comes down to is every appeal is unique. And as we've went through the process over the years, it used to be kind of less of a complex issue at the Board of Revisions, and then we started going to the Saskatchewan Municipal Board, and we were getting direction that there was information that wasn't provided at the initial appeal that should have been provided, so we've kind of went the avenue now where all the information needs to go to the Board of Revision for whatever the issue may be, so that it can be relied on later on if the appeal goes further. So it's something we can continue to look at, but you can't cut out certain things. There's certain things we have to have in the appeal submission to make sure that we're covering the basis of the legislation when we're actually supporting our assessment appeals. But it's a good comment, and whether we could simplify it for different types of appeals, that's something we're always looking at. But like I said, it's a good comment. But it's become more legalese over time. And when we get tax agents involved, and you know, it's not just submissions on our side that are huge going to some of these appeals, it's coming from the other side as well. So we want to be making sure we're covering off all the arguments and explaining how we've done things.
And I understand all that. I just, I still don't understand why it's got to be so paper heavy for something that is simple. Or do the Coles notes and put the decision at the front and footnote the rest of it. But to me, you're just upsetting the appellants by throwing them a bunch of paper that they don't understand. I barely understand what you guys are putting out. And you're just trying to push them aside as opposed to actually answering their question.
Well, and I guess when it gets to, good comments, when it gets to an appeal where it goes to a board of revision, that's when the documentation starts, because we have to be able to present our side and the appellant can present their side as well. I mean, if we can resolve the appeal through an agreement to adjust, if there is an error or something we can identify before it goes to the board of revision, none of that happens. There's no documentation required for an agreement to adjust other than a single page. But not all appeals can get satisfied through an agreement to adjust. So then comes down to the explaining of the assessment and the legislation that's in the background. But I take your comments to heart. And yes, if we can make it easier on property owners and less intimidating, that would be a good way if we could improve it. And it's just to figure out how we could do that.
Leonard Junip from the arm of Anscoy, and said you were talking about Big Bobby Clobberwell. You might think this is coming from Mike from Canmore, but we've been wanting to get a re-inspection done, and we've been asking it for a while. And I guess what we're kind of saying is, can you commit to doing the ones that haven't been done for a long time before the ones that are within the 12 years get done?
Todd, that's your department again.
That's a good question. I guess when you consider this arm of Vanscoy, obviously an RM, so there's 296 municipalities, and some of them it's been a long time. And as I identified before 2018, a lot of municipalities had been 25, 30, 35 years since a general reinspection. That's not taking anything away from your administrators putting in lists of properties and we do the annual maintenance. But 2018 was kind of the start of the cycle, and as I showed on that map earlier, if we could do them all in 1 year, that would be great, but we don't have the staff to do that. So we are looking at the age and that type of thing, and I'm not sure Lyndon's here today. Is the arm of Vanscoy next year? So that would be inspected in 2025, but implemented in 2026. Okay. Yeah, and it's a good comment. And it's a matter of we can't get everywhere, but we're making great strides. And as you can see in the last 6 years, we may not be half done the province, but we're getting close. Whereas I've been here, like I mentioned, 35 years. When I started at SAMA in the Swift Current region, and we had a map, and at that time it was in legislation that we were supposed to inspect every rural municipality every 16 years. And there was a beautifully coded map. I remember when I walked in the first day, and it said, well, you know, I farm in that area, and it was like, well, that RM should get inspected in this year, and every RM had a year beside it. And after about 10 years, we'd hardly done any of them because we started working on revaluations and we couldn't find any time for re-inspections. So that kind of fell by the wayside. And the first thing, and as John will mention, if we get working on other things like appeals or evaluations, the first thing that falls off is the re-inspections because we have to do the appeals. But it's a good comment. We're working our best to get them done, and I'd love to have them all done, you know, tomorrow. But again, there's a priority.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Janet from the Arm of Hillsdale. I just have a comment, and it's aimed at your staff. I'm sorry, but I feel that they could do a better job of communicating to municipalities of what the plans are for each individual municipality, and that their emails or how they contact us would give us some information on how to contact them back other than just reply to an email. Thank you.
Okay. Just anybody want to? Well, we're listening. Okay, we'll take it to our staff and mention that. Generally, they're pretty good at getting back to people, but anyways, it's noted. Anybody else? Okay. Maybe I'll ask our board of directors each to comment, and I'll start with Audrey. Myron, there are no resolutions, so I'll leave you to last to wrap it up, if that's okay. And we'll start with Audrey Tremblay.
Thanks, John. Well, thank you for coming out today. And I know that you've had a lot of numbers thrown at you today. But to you administrators, when you get your preliminary numbers, they will be at 100% of value. But it's important that you take that to your council and to ensure that everyone's aware of any anomalies that will happen. And don't be afraid or hesitate to call your local office and ask for any explanation that you might. And remember, for many of you, you'll have new council members maybe by this fall. And if you have time to do some modeling, even based on your current percentage of values or your mill rate factors, and you have some real numbers, you'll look pretty impressive to your new council when you'll be able to give them all that good information. So it's important. It'll save some appeals in the long run, so I encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. Randy Golden.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, as we are getting to the end of the meeting, and I know everyone needs to get up and have a stretch. So I'm an elected official with the City of Yorkton, so speaking with the elected officials in this room, I encourage you that when these numbers come to you, have those discussions with your administrators, but also if there's any concerns. I know our city had some concerns, and we had Myron come out and meet with our council, so I would suggest to you to definitely do that. I also will suggest we always, at the SUMA convention, which is starting next week, April 14th, that we always have presentations from SAMA. It's one thing that we always have on our agenda, so please take that in, because they're open to the presentations and very much open to questions and having individual meetings. So hopefully to the elected officials in this room, I'll see you again next week at the SUMA convention.
Thank you, Randy. Rod?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm relatively new this time around. I've been on the board before, but one of the things I always appreciated about somebody coming in new is you get a fresh set of eyes, and I tend to look at process, and I would like to say that so far, at least, I've observed, a fairly sound process. I do want to say, though, that even though the assessment is the basic foundation for the ultimate tax burden of who pays what, it's only one step. And so it's going to be, a challenge for everybody, because everybody wants to know now what that is going to look like next year at this time. Well, we can't say that yet. So it's that's one of the challenges that you're going to have. It is definitely a good practice to go and do the modeling and do the estimating of what those various classes of property may look like in terms of their proportion of what your total budget need may happen to be. So I would suggest you do that as well. But I do want to say that from my observations so far, I'm seeing a sound process at the SAMA level, and that is going to provide a solid foundation for moving forward.
Thank you, Rod. Jim?
Worst speaking last is there's not too many profound statements to make, but I'd like to welcome everybody. And I noticed when the introductions earlier, when they had the new administrators, or the split between administrators and council, that approximately half your administrators been retired out of that field for about 10 years, but I had worked for the Administrators Association and the Board of Examiners for about 30 years. And looking around the room, I think I can identify 5 administrators, and there was a time when I could name everyone in the province. But it just shows there's renewal. I'm really glad to see the new administrators show up at these. These sessions are very valuable, and will certainly make your life easier as a municipal administrator. Good luck.
Okay, and I'll just make a few comments myself. Like Andrew was just up here, and you saw the trends. Our ag land is moving up 40%, but because I'm quite proud of our ag model that uses a provincial index. That's 40% for everybody. And that's not one guy at 80 and one at 0 with an average of 40. That's 40 whether you're Maple Creek, Estevan, Hudson Bay, or Meadow Lake. It's the same. So we ag land's gone up, but there's fairness in that, so we don't draw lines between communities. The other thing I would mention briefly is I was asked by SARM to sit on that IPTI committee. I didn't agree with the getting rid of percentage of values. That's the only thing we have in agriculture. Because we have no subclasses, we can only differentiate between farmland and pasture land through the percentage of values. As far as the base date, it's dead center in the thing. You saw Andrew's charts up here. They're tracking all 4 years prior and even after that base date. It's not just highlighting January 1st, 2023 and coming up with what things sell at that day. It's tracked before and even a little later to come up with that number. And the other thing on the revaluation cycle, at the 4 years, it seems to work. Ontario's the biggest service jurisdiction, and that's what they use. When we looked at it, cities like Edmonton, 400,000 properties, 128 people in assessment. Saskatoon, 100,000 properties, a quarter, but 18 people. So it takes a lot of people if you're going to shorten that cycle, and somebody's got to pay for it. So those are a couple of concerns. The good things coming out of IPTI, recommendations that only one appeal in a cycle, because we're going to court 2 and 3 times on the same appeal. On these big industrial ones, send them to the SMB right away. We go through a couple levels and then we end up at the SMB anyways. And when there is a decision made on an individual property, sometimes it doesn't have to reflect all the other properties similar to that because it's unique. And right now we're getting things caught up when we're doing this, implementing what's been recommended. So those are just a few of the things. So there's some good things coming out of there that I see. I hope government moves in that. Other than that, thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I'll call Myron up here to wrap the meeting up.
Thank you, John. We finally get to the part of the meeting that everybody was waiting for, adjournment. Thank you, John, for emceeing today. I certainly do appreciate that. And I want to thank everybody for attending today. And for those of you that attended the session yesterday, I hope you found it engaging and informative. We appreciate the support of our partners and stakeholders. SAMA continues to look for ways to improve assessment system for the province. I hope we've addressed some of the questions regarding assessments in Saskatchewan. Please take time to fill out the cards on the table if you have any questions, and we can always get back to you on any of those questions that you have. Following this meeting, an evaluation form will be sent to you by email, and please take the time to fill them out and send them back, because it really gives us an idea of what direction we should be taking these meetings in the future, and hopefully we can address any concerns that you have from the meeting here today. In closing, I'd like to again thank the province, Minister McMorris, and the SAMA board and representatives from the independent jurisdictions and all the delegates attending the meeting today, and those, of course, of you that attended here, and those of you who have attended virtually online. Thank you to Peter and Corinne for all the work they've done to organize this meeting for today, and the staff that worked with that. I think it went very smooth. It worked out well. Thank you very much. So with that, I'd like to say goodbye to everybody. Drive safely, and hopefully we'll see you all here again next year for 2025. Thank you.